Super exciting afternoon. Like I said, we're running a little late this morning, so we're going to let Meredith do the communication and creative services update here. For the next half hour, we have Jason Clement from SFC here, and Jess Cool, she stepped out for a minute. Talk about sports tourism with Tim and Dustin. So, turn it over to Meredith, let her.
All right, hey everybody. Hey. Here we go. All right, so earlier this year, let's see, Mark retired in April, I believe April 14th, and one of the first things that we did as a department, it had been the Public Information Department for many years. You also see public information in other cities across the United States. There's a big movement, a big push to go to communications, and that was one of the first things that we did to reflect this new initiative, more these goals that we have in mind that we want to meet, where we want to take the department going forward. So we went from public information to communications and creative services in the beginning of the fall. And the biggest thing is why, okay? It's because we're not public informing anymore. That's old school. We're more than that. We're talking about internal communications, external communications. We're storytelling. We're telling people the whys and what we're doing, and we're telling your stories, the different department goals and initiatives, and we have one voice together. And the biggest platform that we have is Facebook, where we did just recently reach 95,000 followers, and that's where you're going to find most of what we do as a team, our videos, things that we post, our photos, where we tell the city's news. Then I just included this slide. Who are the city's communicators? You have me, you have Patrick, Aaron, Chastity, and then we also have Randolph, who is police communications, and John, who's fire communications, who you hear from as well. So that's our city team who you hear from, and this is also from my Rotary presentation, so I thought I would just include that. And then Randolph does the police Facebook and lots of things with the police department, and same for John, and Dana helps him as well. And the biggest thing with communications and creative services, our goal every day is to serve as the city's newsroom. We all talk every single day. As a team, we meet every Monday, and that includes our police and fire department partners, and also sometimes Dana will come to those as well. And we talk about what's going on, what do we need to know about, what are some of the big events that are coming up that people need to know about, what are some big changes in your department, some new projects, some new initiatives, things that we want to let people know about, and also let our teammates know about if it's something internal. So this is just a snapshot of what we do every day that I just thought I would include, and how we have a goal every day to work as the city's newsroom. Another big change that we had this year was the city streaming, the big audio video upgrade that we did in partnership with Brian and his team. Could not have done it without him. If you've ever seen it before this, you would have seen like 5 different big boxes that were stacked up in here. There were a million different wires. So Brian and his team came through and they cleared it all out. So did HTC, and that's the clean desk that we have now. And we have a much clearer picture when it comes to our city streaming services, which is really nice. The audio is great. We also upgraded the cameras, and we provided those 2 big monitors that you see on either side of the council chambers, and also the little monitors that every city council member has. And then our court has also gotten to benefit from some of those changes. Rich and Greg, I believe, Jojo, I don't know where you are, but they don't have to wheel in the big monitors anymore, and they are able to just utilize the big TVs that we have on either side for what they need to use them for. And the other big change with this was we got rid of the middleman, our middleman streaming device called Slick, and then we were able to reallocate the money that we saved by getting rid of the middleman and using YouTube to buy the new equipment that we have for the creative services manager position. So that includes the camera, the audio equipment, and we'll have lots more left over from that because we've saved about $6,000 to go straight onto YouTube. And that also made everything very accessible, where we have people watching now from home, we have people watching from their office. We were able to, for the first time, stream this budget retreat. And our handle is Myrtle Beach City Gov. So the biggest thing for our department, just to let you all know, is telling our own stories first. Operating as a newsroom, the best part about being a part of this team is that we get that insider look. We're able to talk to Jojo if I need to, or call up Dustin, or call up Howard or Val for what we need every day. If I need to call Chief Guire or Chief Proc for something with the police department. The perk is that you get that inside look that the public doesn't get every day, that even the media can't get every day, or they have to take a long time to set it up. And we're able to tell these stories from a different angle that your average person isn't able to see. The biggest part about telling our own stories first, and we try to do it in a minute 30 or less, is, again, we talked about the angle that the regular reporters aren't going to get, but also making sure that they have that understanding that other people who aren't in this every single day don't understand why we do the budget the way that we do, why we might allocate this amount of money to this project, why we're doing this project one way versus the other. An example of that recently is the ocean outfall that we're doing, a huge project, and a lot of people don't understand that by building these big pipes, how we're taking 11 stormwater pipes off the beach. That's benefiting families and their beach experience, whether they live here or whether they're visiting. So telling stories with those angles that reporters or even just our everyday residents aren't going to understand until we are able to make those points for them and to give them that why factor that makes such a big deal. We get to feature city staff every day, again, that inside look at the projects, and we view it as an educating factor. I keep talking about the why, and that's what it is. When we're writing stories and forming them, we ask ourselves in the writing process, why do I care? And that's how you come up with the why and get people to understand the importance for why we're doing what we're doing. I view this department in a big way as we're helping reporters along. I view the media as our friend. We're working with them and not against them. And especially when it comes to understanding the way the media landscape has changed over the years. They're short-staffed and a lot of them are underpaid. And especially in this type of market, they're coming here from colleges and universities out of state. Many of them have never been to Myrtle Beach in their life, believe it or not. I was one of them. So then they're coming here and they might be covering the budget retreat or something that's a very big project for us that we've been talking about for years and they don't understand. So providing these stories on the platform that we are is helping educate them to help tell those stories better so that our residents understand more because they don't understand either. And that's a big part of what we do as well. And I think too, at the end of the day, while we've seen lots of videos and the way internally they can help tell our stories and help get the presentation and the point across, not everything is a video. Some of it is just best told through pictures or through a presentation or a visit. And the biggest thing is it's working. So I've put a couple examples right here of why our initiative is working, why the investment in the equipment has worked. We've been posting our own news stories on our website and on our Facebook page and our social media platforms. Our media partners, who again are short-staffed and don't always have the people to send them to our events, or at the time they didn't realize how important they were, they're able to just take our stories straight off of our Facebook page or straight off of wherever we're providing it, and they air them as is. And being able to provide that quality video and the quality story with the way that we are is benefiting us in the long run because we're telling it accurately and we're also telling it timely and we're telling it with the angle that we need to, and we're getting our good news across. And this is informing the taxpayers, it's informing our visitors, it's informing the media, and it's informing them accurately, which is always important, it always has been, but especially in the world that we live in today. And then this was another one, the media's been able to use our Deepwater Ocean Outfall video that we've been posting, and also a lot of our drone footage that we've posted throughout the city. They just take it straight off the Facebook page and it'll air on the 6 o'clock news that night. The Hand Heavy app with the fire department, that was a big one because otherwise they wouldn't have been able to tell the story the way that they did. She just took our story that we had on Facebook and did it exactly the same on the 6 o'clock news and just added her voice to it. And that's totally fine. It's great. And that's getting, again, I'll say story again, but it's getting what we're trying to do directly across to the people who are watching the news every night, and it's doing it in an accurate way, which is so important. And before I go on to Patrick, there's 5 factors, I'll say, 5 journalistic factors that all of these hit. Our top stories, they all hit. The things that we're doing today in Budget Retreat while we're here, they're all hit. They all hit these 5, or one of the 5 factors. The more of these 5 factors that you hit, the more popular of a story it'll become. And Patrick's going to talk more to that. And I was just wondering if anyone could think of, and I think you will, the 5 factors, the most important factors of why we care. Anyone? Tommy? No. The 5 factors that'll hit every story of why people care, why we spend our time to read through a 2-page news story, why we want to see the newspaper every day, why we take the time.
How it affects us?
Yes, the 5 ways it'll affect us.
You want to remove emotions?
Money,
Emotions?
sort of. So money's number 1. Family, safety, health, and community. I had to do a little refresher. Are the 5 journalistic factors that every single story that you'll see on the news hit in some way. It's why we're sitting here today. So like when you look at the Hands Heavy app, we'll talk about money with the fire department, its safety, its family, its health, and its community. That's one reason why that story did so well. It hit literally every single of the 5 factors. You can talk about the ocean outfall. That's more community and family. It creates a better beach experience for your family when you go to the beach, when you don't have the stormwater pipe sitting there to look at. We'll talk about stories with the fire and the police department. Always do well, without a doubt, because it hits your family, it hits safety, it'll hit money, it hits health and community. It hits every single factor. You talk about weather. Weather stories always do well, and Patrick's going to go more into that on some of our top performing stories over the last 90 days. And the better the story, when I say better, the more hits that it has, you'll see that it hits more of those 5 factors. Money being number 1. All right, Pat.
So put this together last week. So when we refer to the last 90 days here, we're talking first week of December through first week of March. Some of our top performing posts here on Facebook, we noticed kind of 3 themes. Obviously we post a lot on our Facebook page, so we see a lot of different stuff, but these 3 themes kind of highlight what we noticed over the last 90 days. Number 1, holiday content did very well. When we have this stat here reached, you see Nance Plaza decorations reached 29,000 plus people. Basically what that means is it showed up in 29,000 plus people's feeds, whether that's because they follow us on Facebook, whether that's because somebody shared the post and they saw it through that way, or if the algorithm is just feeding it to them for whatever reason. So 29,000 people reached on Nance Plaza decorations. Shop with a Hero did a video on that one where we got more than 32,000 views. And then photo of Santa in the fire truck there reached over 25,000 people. These are the sorts of things that really kind of grab people's attention, and this was one of the trends that we noticed over the last 90 days. Second here, I'm sure Kathy will be happy to see this one. We're Hiring Wednesday had a really massive reach over the last 90 days here. So you see kind of some of the highlights here. February 26th reached over 68,000 people, way more for February 19th. That post reached over 161,000, and then February 12th reached 89,000 plus people. And then finally here, of course, I think this is probably the biggest highlight over the last 90 days would be our snow content. Anybody who kind of noticed and paid attention to some of the stats on some of those posts that we had as the snow came in and after it had made its way here, noticed just how much of a viral impact it sort of had on the city here. So we had 2 videos in particular. We posted more than that, but our 2 top performing videos combined for over 3.3 million views. I mentioned this briefly when Fox had asked about it yesterday. One of them, 1.1 million views. That would have been the drone video, which you see the screenshot of right there. And then the other one was the first video we posted when the snow had kind of just started falling right at the corner of Ocean Boulevard and 9th Avenue North. That one almost reached 2 million views. It kind of trailed out right at 1.9. So I was a little bit disappointed that it didn't reach 2 million, but it was still cool to see such a massive impact that sort of content had. And that doesn't even include, we had a photo. It was just one simple post, just a few sentences, photo of the beach instead of the sand. There's a bunch of snow. That post had the single highest reach out of any of our snow content. You can see it reached 1.4 million people, which is just massive. So what is creative services? I am the creative services manager. I'm going to kind of explain this the way that I like to explain it to people who are maybe family or friends or people I'm meeting for the first time who ask me, oh, what do you do for work? What's your job? The way I explain it is always this, and I know some people in this room will be able to relate to this. I say, well, my title is Creative Services Manager. It's essentially a fancy way of saying I shoot video. That's essentially what it is. some people in this room can't relate to that. You know, Chief Croc, Chief Guire, Fire Chief, Police Chief, they can explain, everyone knows what they're talking about. Creative Services Manager, not so much. So to kind of break it down for you here, we have specific goals with creative services, and videography is kind of the primary thing that we're focusing on right now as it stands in the Communications and Creative Services Department, and specifically the Creative Services side. So we recognize the importance of a digital world. Everybody is consuming their media on their phone, on apps, on social media, that sort of thing. So we're kind of reaching those people there. Videos can have the potential to have a very large reach. Back in, I want to say it was maybe like 2015, 2016, something like that, Mark Zuckerberg came out and he said, we're going to make Facebook very video-centric. You're going to see a lot more videos in your feed than you have in the past. Sure enough, that happened, and roughly 10 years later, here we are, and it's kind of the same thing where videos perform very well. Videos are getting recommended to lots of people on Facebook. If you scroll through Facebook, you can't go more than a second or two without seeing some kind of video. So we're really kind of tapping into that to help with the large potential reach we have with videos and reels. Creative messaging, explaining how these projects impact the everyday person. You know, why, you know, where are my tax dollars going? That sort of thing. And it's great to have a great group of people throughout the city who do a really good job of explaining that sort of stuff. I'm going to point out one shining example, which I would say is Chris Miller over in Public Works, who does a fantastic job explaining all of our infrastructure projects. He doesn't just say, this is what's going on, this is what you'll see. He explains that why. Why does it impact these people? And Meredith kind of touched on it with the ocean outfall. You know, he's great at explaining, you know, this is something that will take a few months of construction, but years down the line, it's going to benefit all of you because of X, Y, and Z reason. He does a great job explaining that, and we also have several people throughout the city who do a really good job of explaining that can really help with our videos so that people who are watching, the everyday person, can really get a good understanding of what's going on. Because as we all know, city business can be very complicated, especially for people who aren't in it every single day like we are. The everyday person, Joe Schmo, who lives on 62nd Avenue North, has really no idea what we're doing for a lot of times. So these videos can kind of really help kind of break it down and explain it to these people so that they can understand it and digest it simply. And this has internal and external benefits. You know, internally, I think we've seen a lot of people, you know, will come up to me and say, you know, love seeing these videos. They feel great that what they're working on is being explained to people. And then externally, of course, we've talked about just being able to break it down for everybody so that they can understand what's going on in the city. So that's great. And then kind of looking down in the future, as we had talked about, if the funds become available for a graphic designer, that's kind of going to be the second part of creative services, where we're going to be focusing on the stuff you see here: web design, animation, stationery, signage, newsletters, digital, all that sort of stuff. Going to kind of break down some numbers here. Now I will add one quick little caveat here. If you do the math on these 3 sub-bullet points, they don't add up to 89, so missed something along the way. But it doesn't matter anyway, because these numbers are already outdated, because I put this together last week, and we put out so much video content that all these numbers are, you know, they're lower than what the actual numbers are anyway. But kind of breaking it down here, 89 total videos, 76 of them external, 7 of them internal, and then we've got our city council video updates, which we recently started doing. As you all know, we used to do them as just somebody at a podium going through a slideshow. Maybe I'm biased, but I think the videos tend to make it more alive, easier to pay attention to. I see the mayor nodding her head, so that's good to see as well. Additionally, part of my role as Creative Services Manager is mentoring, and Erin has really taken it upon herself to really learn videography, how it works, and editing as well, and developing her skills there. She has shown a lot of enthusiasm in developing these skills, and she's been working very hard at it as well. You can see, as of last week, again, that number's gone up as well, 16 videos, including 2 of them, which are 2 of our 5 most viewed videos on YouTube. She's doing a fantastic job with that. Some of you may have seen the video that was posted yesterday, wishing Myrtle Beach a happy 87th birthday. That was done by her as well, and that one's doing great numbers on Facebook. So she's really gone all in on the videography side of things and has shown a lot of enthusiasm and excitement toward making that happen. And she's also developing great on-camera skills as well. You've all seen her during the city council updates, and she does a great job with those. We're kind of coaching her through how to become even better, and she's been just absolutely soaking it all in. And other videos, not just the city council updates as well, like the screenshot in the middle there was kind of to promote the tree lighting at Winter Wonderland at the beach, and she did a fantastic job with that. She does a fantastic job with all of her on-camera stuff, so it's been great to see her kind of grow and show enthusiasm and excitement to grow in that area.
All right, I'm a little less nervous now. I do want to point out, though, Patrick does a lot more than just videography, and I do appreciate, the support of City Council, support of city staff, senior staff, Fox, in being able to have a vision from public information to creative services and communications, because it's a big vision, and we're taking baby steps. It's going to be a long journey, but the progress that we've made so far has been amazing, and it wouldn't have been possible had it not been for, a great hire like Patrick. We were able to work together for 5 years, which was a long time in local media here, not a long time in the grand scheme of things, but knowing that we would complement each other well and how much we've been able to do as a team, whereas I'm more of the writer and he's a great videographer, a great editor. We both love to mentor, and how lucky we've been with Erin specifically and her being a sponge. And, she wasn't hired necessarily as a reporter, but has totally taken it in and loved it, and it's helped this goal and this vision that we have start to really flourish and take it to the next step. By expanding the department to communications and creative services, that brought in probably our biggest project yet of branding. A lot of you have heard about it. It's a super exciting project that we're just starting. It officially started on March 5th, Wednesday, March 5th. A handful of you were part of that team in choosing the agency. We set a record, I believe, per AN of more than 20 agencies that actually bid the project. So we had quite the load of homework as we were interviewing and going through all of the packets that came to us. We ended up having 5 that we interviewed in person, and we landed on the Zimmerman agency. They're based out of Tallahassee, Florida. One reason that we chose them is we felt like their personalities really vibed with ours. We loved their presentation, their charisma. They seemed super personable, and they were so excited, most importantly, about getting the opportunity to brand Myrtle Beach for what I'm going to say will be the first time, because we've had a city seal, which is totally separate from an actual brand, and we've had that seal since, any guesses?
76.
Yes, 1976. So a good time, a good while, and yeah, so it's time for something new, something fun, and something fresh. So I just included a little bit about the Zimmerman agency, some other popular places you'll probably recognize that they have branded would be the Bahamas. They branded every single island of the Bahamas, the city of Pensacola, North Carolina's Crystal Coast, Bryce Canyon, Great Place, Polk County, and Daytona Beach. And I don't know if I can say it or not. I was going to if the live stream didn't work out, but they're currently branding a very large Midwest city, and they'll be coming out with that soon. So I'm sure I'll share that with everybody when they do. The biggest thing to come out of this that I really want to get across is this is not a 5-person project. This is an everybody project. We need everybody's input and everybody's buy-in to really make this successful, and for everyone to be excited about this. So right now we're forming a core branding committee, and this has since changed since I made this. We weren't this far along, but it's gonna be a core branding committee of 12 to 13 people, and I'm currently creating a list with Fox, and I also got some help from the Chamber of Commerce of up to 120 people. So I'm going to have representatives from every single department be a part of this, part of their momentum sessions. With Zimmerman, you'll see that on this second bullet down. We're going to have it April 7th to 11th. They're 4-hour sessions. So if you haven't heard from me yet, you're going to be hearing from me soon, because we are creating that list, and we're going to get people signed up for those sessions to be a part of it. It's proprietary. I don't know every single thing that's involved in those 4 to 4.5 hours, but again, it's really exciting, and it's a very important part of this process. So if you're someone who is able to be a part of it, I really hope you take that opportunity to do so. And then I just included a little more about the timeline that we're looking at. Zimmerman was different from some of the other agencies in that they were about 3 to 4 months on their timeline. Of course, if we want to take it to 5 months, we're able to do that. We're the ones who, are paying them to do it. So we're not stuck on these hard deadlines, but the way that their process works, this is what we're looking at. So it's very exciting by the end of the summer that we could have a brand. We'll have a logo, we'll have a set of guidelines, and we've never really had that before. And with having that official brand comes the implementation. And what does that look like? And that's something that we're not ready to go to yet, but when it is implemented, I mean, we're talking about all the city signage being changed and updated, you know, vehicle wraps. The biggest things that we can do right away will be the change in stationery that you'll see, possibly our business cards, the city newsletters. I plan on updating the Friday facts, our branding like that you'll see across presentations, and our different pamphlets. I think I already said newsletters, invitations. It's kind of like the sky is the limit, which is very exciting. And another point I do want to get across is that our city seal will stay. There's a difference between a city seal and a logo. Cities who are hundreds of years old still have their city seal, and it's used for more formalities. And then we'll have the logo for an overall branding initiative. And the branding, which will be, you know, our identity, will go along very well with our new website. So kudos to Brian Garrett, who secured myrtlebeach.gov is going to be our new URL. And we're moving to .gov from .com for all kinds of reasons that you can also talk to Brian about, but also because it's secure. And as I mentioned earlier, we're talking about the days that we live in where accuracy and the word is escaping me, not dependability, but anyways, .gov is much more reliable than a .com URL. And it's also nice because it's short and it's easy to go to. A lot of times when I'm talking to someone over the phone, they're always wanting to know, they might even say, how do you spell Myrtle? Or they say, is it all spelled out? How do I actually put that in the URL? They don't understand that how to actually put it in there. So just saying myrtlebeach.gov is making things simpler across all kinds of platforms. Did you raise your hand, Mr. Chestnut? Nope. Okay. And I won't go through the whole list of some of the issues with our current website. You guys all know it's no secret. I mean, even getting to the live stream today, I think we had to click 4 different places just to get, or excuse me, the council documents, 4 different places just to get to it. So some of the big takeaways from the new website, it's going to be simpler, it's going to be consolidated, it's going to be cohesive, it's going to reflect the new brand, and it's also going to be updated when we talk about AI and different things that are available. Digital payment systems, Jeremy, taking other forms and things digital versus things being hard copies. That will all be reflected in the new website. Brian, am I forgetting anything that you want to touch on? Okay. And AI. AI is something exciting that will be included. And that's our first website. It was like a bulletin board. I got it from the Wayback Machine. And that's it. And those are our QR codes if anyone needs to scan to subscribe. Any questions?
I have a question.
Mhm.
I just want to say that where you have taken things in such a short time from where we were is incredible.
Not just me, not just me.
It's exciting to see what you all are doing because ever since I got here, I felt like we were behind the times when it came to communications and how we were doing things. So thank you and the team for telling me.
Thank you guys.
I'll be excited when we take down 6 to 8 signs at every beach access and put up one that looks all quality branded and looks the same.
We'll work on that.
Put a QR code on it.
Meredith, the input team, for lack of a better description, that you're going to form amongst ourselves for this project.
Sorry, yeah.
Is there any consideration for also talking to our residents from what they think we are versus where we want to go?
Yes, and I didn't go
I
in.
think their branding is not the same as where we want to go, but we need to know that.
And I didn't go into every single little detail of branding. I probably should have gone into a little more detail on that end of things. The list of up to 120 people is going to include city staff and non-city staff, of course, city council, and then we're also going to do a survey. So the public, of course, is going to be invited for that. That's probably where we're going to get a lot of our input. And thank you, Jason and his team, who are branding the downtown. They have a ton of research and a ton of information that they're sharing with the Zimmerman Agency that they're going over and analyzing right now ahead of those momentum sessions to help prepare them more. And I've also been working with Stuart Butler at the Chamber, and they have a ton of research from when they rebranded, however many years ago now that was. I mean, a ton that they have shared, and they're working with Zimmerman as well to really help them get on their feet with research that's already available, and we're not repeating that work and wasting any time, so that when they come here, they're prepared and ready to go and hit the ground running with these momentum sessions, and then everything that comes after. I can go back. Everything that comes after that. And I will say the difference between the core group, where some of you have already heard from me, is that we're the only group that will continue to meet on an as-needed basis with the Zimmerman Agency, whether it might be a couple decisions that need to be made, keeping things up to date, just kind of like the go-to communicators, again, as needed as we get to the finish line. And we hope to get the bid together soon. That's going to be a top priority as soon as we finish up with budget retreat for the website. Anything else that I'm missing?
The website, is the Zimmerman company doing the website as well, or do we have another?
Not right now. We're going to have to do a separate bid for the website. I don't think that that's something they're interested in right now. The website is our biggest behemoth of behemoths. The amount of information that is currently on it is quite honestly amazing, and where different things are put. I mean, just recently our links were updated for traffic tickets and traffic violations and utility payments. And I was going through trying to find those links. And then this is kind of one of the points with how things will be better with the new website, is I was going to the easy ways to find it. And I know there's still links that need to be updated because they're put in so many different places where it might be 6 to 8 clicks away. And our biggest thing, and Brian can talk more to this as well, is, we want everything 2 clicks.
Got it.
Easy peasy.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Oh, I thought you raised your hand. Good? Yeah, that's fine. Thank you, guys.
Transition now to support Stewart and Jason and Jessica here. From Ford Facilities Corporation. But to set this up, we thought it'd be good to give you an update on what our youth programs are doing, and then what we did in sports tourism. So Tim Huber's here, that'll give us a briefing of what we did in sports tourism. Then we're gonna transition to Jason and Jessica and talk about the next big thing. If you recall, back in December, we had our mini budget retreat at workshop. There were some comments from council about what to do with the 21 acres behind the John P. Road Sports Center. And that's what Jason and Jess are going to lead us through their analysis. We did that. Jess, for those who don't know, and I think everybody does know, that the Sports Facility Corporation does manage the John P. Road Murphy Sports Center, of course, and has been for the last 10 years. As a reminder, the 10-year anniversary is March 27th. Is that right? So we'll be there, so please put that on your calendar. Everyone should have an invite. I just realized that this is March 13th, so it's like 2 weeks. I saw that it reminded me. But I'm going to load this up and then let you gonna start?
Yeah, I'll sort.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, shoot, that's not still. Oops, that's Jason.
Land behind the sports center is going to be 11,000 pickleball courts. That's
Magic Man did it.
right, good afternoon. As always, we appreciate any time that we can stand before you and talk about all things parks, recreation, and sports tourism. Specifically today, the growth of city sports and the trends that we're seeing here in city sports. So I'm going to start us off on the recreation side. These are our local youth, and then Tim will follow up with the sports tourism. So this is the Excel spreadsheet for the last 4 years of our youth sports, participation numbers and wait list. I'm going to skip through this because if you're anything like me, you prefer the pretty pictures and graphs instead of spreadsheets. So I have converted all of this to graph form, which makes it much easier to read. Baseball and softball participants. So this is 22 through 25. Left side of your screen, you'll see the actual participants. Right side, you're going to see the wait list. Spring baseball, you can see in 2022, spring baseball, we had 658 participants. This past year, or this current year, actually, we just registered for it. Spring baseball, we have 742 participants. So you can see we've increased participation about 100 kids there. But also the interesting thing, if you look at the wait list, 22, the wait list was 5. It's now 135. So we've been able to increase some of the participants, but also the wait list is trending way upwards. Fall baseball, similar thing. Fall is a little bit smaller than spring. A lot of the kids play football instead of baseball in the fall. But you can see participation, we increased about 100 kids there. Wait list as well is increasing. Softball, showing some trends upward, specifically the wait list more so than the participants, but trending upward, no doubt. Basketball. So we got summer and winter basketball. If you look at the participants for basketball, it looks a little flatter. But if you look at the wait list side, the wait list is growing. With baseball and basketball, you ask why is there such a wait list? Why can't we accommodate more kids? There's a few factors, but the main reason is just flat out lack of field space and court space. Unfortunately, that results in kids not being able to get into the program. So that's what you see in basketball. We're kind of maxed out with the amount of teams, the amount of kids we can get in while the wait list continues to grow on that. And then finally, the outlier here, football. This is tackle football. We are continuing to see tackle football programs trend downward. This is a national trend. This is not just an isolated Myrtle Beach issue. Both participants and wait list trending down. Cheer, however, is trending upwards, both participants and wait list. I think that is, any questions on the recreation, youth sports stuff before we turn it over to sports tourism?
How is what's going on to our neighbor to the north with their expansion of all their fields? How is that going to impact us? Because a lot of what you do, and it's a tremendous, it's a great job, it's the kind of tourism we need, but you have, out of city, out of county, out of state people coming here, holding their baseball tournaments. And are we also seeing a corresponding wait list for those types of people coming in? In other words,
On the recreation side, the youth sports, that's not really going to affect us. Tim, when we talk sports tourism, Tim can touch on that.
Dustin, how's the football participants going down, and yet there's still a wait list?
Great question. So if you look at the wait list, even though we trended down, there's 22 kids on the wait list. There's not enough to make a team in that, and you got to think that's spread over several different age groups. So it might be 4 or 5 kids in a certain age, 4 or 5 kids in a certain age. So it's just not enough to make a team. If that makes sense.
Can't make one all-age team and see how they do.
Yeah, that'd be tough.
all ages, all weights?
Yeah, all ages, all weights.
Are we looking at, because this seems to be a trend nationally, going to flag football? It's less impactful, so to speak.
Absolutely, we are. It's been over the last year, we've had a lot of conversations about that. I suspect in the next couple of years, we're gonna move to that. We've actually talked about next year starting a girls' flag football league. We've had a lot of interest in girls' flag football, so that might be where we start out the flag football. But I do think that we're gonna see a trend more towards the youth sports, not at least right away, going away from tackle football completely, but kind of trending more toward flag.
Okay, so good afternoon. From the tourism perspective, if I can just start with kind of an overview, the metric that we use when we're looking at our trends on the tourism side is the direct spending numbers. So that is $1 one time in the community. So the numbers you'll see are not economic impact numbers, but direct spending numbers. Wanted to point that out. And then along with that, how we define sports tourism on the events we report. Basically, 3 criteria. One is the majority of the lodging that the visitor's using is inside the city of Myrtle Beach. So that accounts for the really large events that are using North Myrtle Beach facilities. Minimum of a 2-night stay, and then a minimum of 200 athletes that are participating. So that's our baseline to actually be considered a sports tourism event. And 2024, the complete summary, I don't even think it's on one of these slides. Our total direct spend in 2024 was at $185.1 million. That represents the 6.3% increase over 2023. Now, of note, pertaining to this conversation of youth sports, the increase was not attributable to youth sports. The last year's increases were really twofold. The PGA Championship, which was new, or not championship, but the PGA Tour event, excuse me, and the NCAA Collegiate Track and Field Championships. So between those 2 events, it added about $12 million in new spending to the community.
What was that total?
For the calendar year 2024, $185.1 million in direct spending. Okay. So the first slide just shows you by venue. The biggest driver, the Ripken Experience, 2024 Grand Park Athletic Complex, moving forward, Steyer's Athletic Complex, and Ned Dunkel, the Convention Center, Myrtle Beach Sports Center. So those are kind of our 4 pillars, if you will, that are driving most of the spend, the direct spend. Then 82% youth, that's been constant for as long as I've been here, in that 80 to 84% range. That's who we are, that's what we do, that's what we lean into. Let me go the right way. And then we also break it down by sport. And this is where we really start to able to highlight, as Dunstan mentioned, it's all facility driven, it's all venue driven. Between baseball and fast pitch diamond sports, that is, I did the math already, $73 million in diamond sports, because that's, the Ripken Experience has 9 fields, Steyer's has 9 fields, and that Dunkel has 6 fields, other fields, Horry County Schools, North Myrtle Beach, et cetera, et cetera. So the number of facilities really drives this. When you want to look at, compare on the outdoor side, diamonds versus rectangles, soccer, football are 2 sports that we track on the youth level. We don't even track lacrosse, and we don't even track flag football. Again,
This is all money spent
it's all
inside-
facility driven.
This is all money spent inside the city or just,
This is the total Grand Strand number, if you will.
okay, so it can.
We do break it out, a percentage that is specific to because we do break out in city lodging, non-city lodging. So there is a secondary number, but we've always reported the larger number benefit to the entire area.
I think that city number is in the slideshow, so you probably got it in your package.
So just the point I wanted to make on that was comparing diamond sports to rectangle sports. There's a huge difference because it's the number of rectangle sports spaces that we have. We don't really. We have Doug Shaw Memorial Stadium and Ashley Booth Field. This direct spending we achieve now is converting diamond space to rectangle space. And then we had to make a decision on which to be prefer on a specific date. Do we do a softball tournament? Do we do a 7-on-7 football tournament? So we go back to 2020 and then through 2024 for our look back. Again, just as a refresher, Myrtle Beach, we rebounded in sports tourism as quick, if not quicker than anyone in the nation with sports group visitation in 2021. And we did not fall nearly as far during the actual pandemic. So our numbers from 21 to 24, we still continue to grow, but I think the emphasis is it's not really from youth sports, it's from other sports or other segments.
Tim, can you go back one? Never mind, that was the slide, I was gonna make a comment, but that's this next slide answers the question. That slide right there.
All right, so as far as the governmental revenues, the breakout is all there with state, city, county, school district, Coastal Carolina, or Georgetown Technical College. And year over year, obviously a direct correlation with the overall direct spending number.
One comment I was gonna make was to see how high the state revenue is, and how important this is for the state of South Carolina, not just the city and the county.
Yes. So yeah, hard to read, but in 2024, the state revenues, about $9.5 million back to the state. Okay, so again, that really is, when we're talking about youth sports and the growth of youth sports, and from the tourism perspective, how do we do more? It comes back to the facility question. You look at our diamond fields, the Stiers complex in Ned Donkel. Not a lot of movement. There's one outlier the first year coming out of the pandemic. It's really on the outdoor side, it's across all venues, and even on the indoor side. Our the Sports Center being around 10 years, Stiers being around for 12 years, Doug Shaw being around for 12 years. Especially our tourism calendars are very mature. So we're not we don't have a lot of empty dates we're looking to fill. We make decisions on replacing one event with a better event. Because the other thing being Myrtle Beach is once we have an event here, 9.5 times out of 10, they don't want to leave. They want to keep coming back because this is where their events are most successful. And then again, we broke it, the trend line is broken out by individual sports. And just note, this is inclusive of collegiate as well. But again, think 80% of all these numbers, and that would translate across the baseball, the fast pitch, on the outdoor side. Slow pitch is adult softball, so a totally different sport, and that's why it's not as impactful. And again, soccer, because we don't have 24 soccer fields like we have 24 baseball fields. And the 2024, by the definition of what a sports tourism event is, I believe it was 22 different sports that we tracked in Myrtle Beach. So our overall menu is pretty diverse. And Obviously, some sports much more impactful than others, but we do a lot. A lot of different groups, a lot of different demographics that we serve. I guess that was the last slide, so, no, maybe not. So, yeah, we also then break out the indoor venues. So we'll leave that up as a segue. So gymnastics indoors continues to grow at the sports center. Wrestling is, the trend line is the opposite. We really benefited coming out of the pandemic with a lot of events in the Northeast that couldn't wrestle, came to us. The good news part of that story is we've retained some of those and we still continue to do a little bit of wrestling. But again, our facilities aren't ideally equipped, and the events that come to us aren't going to be as impactful as some of the volleyball or basketball or events that we already have and we already serve. Questions?
Do you know what nationwide, what the direct spend is in sports tourism?
So Sports ETA, our industry association, their latest study was from 2023, and I have that written down somewhere, and Jason can probably help me, $63 billion? Yeah, something like that, yeah. So, which is an 11% increase over 2023. So the trend line in the industry in a whole is continuing on a very steady rise. No decline. Some of the other interesting trends are going to be, as was asked about, flag football, both boys and girls. Flag football will be an Olympic sport in 2028 in Los Angeles. So one of the big takeaways from the last industry study, one of the major trends was the growth of girls' sports and women's sports. International sports was another one of the big ones, but every week, the last month in my news feeds, there's a new college conference that's adding girls flag football as a varsity sport.
So, I mean, everybody in this room knows I don't know much about sports. I go ahead and laugh.
You watched basketball last night?
I did watch. But in looking at a $63 billion industry, a huge economic impact, and you're saying that the groups that come here want to keep coming back here
Absolutely.
because of where we are and who we are. So it makes sense that this is something we want to continue to invest in.
Yes, and the venues that we have, turf fields, hardwood basketball courts, clean restrooms, that is all vital to the overall equation. Plenty of restrooms, parking, beach parking. It's all very, very important. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You got it.
Ryan, you messing with it?
Definitely.
The answer was yes.
Yes.
Not perfect.
Yep.
Okay.
Sometimes we all drop the ball.
We all dropped the ball.
All right, you want us to just roll in, Fox?
And she doesn't know
Sure.
sports.
You guys
Roll
just
it.
go. Okay, here we go. Well, thanks for the segue. Youth sports and sports tourism in general is exploding, and I guess the punchline as a starting point here is Myrtle Beach is winning. There's no question about it. It's one of the premier destinations in the country, not just the Southeast, not just the Eastern United States. I'm not blowing smoke here. Myrtle Beach is a premier destination. It's because of the destination, it's because of what Myrtle Beach is, it's because of the assets that are here as well, and then I would just call it the hospitality, for lack of a better term, and the operational effectiveness. Picking the right partners, Tim's absolutely right. At the sports center, at least, We're blessed to be at this place, and please join us for the 10-year celebration in a couple of weeks. We're blessed to be at this point where we can, remove some of the, lesser performers and bring in the very best performers here. But as you look at those statistics that we were just evaluating, what you see is outside of the PGA event, some of the new things that have been brought in here, we're plateauing a bit as a community because of inventory. So that's a segue to what the team has asked us to present here, and that's the 21 acres. Where do we have opportunity to invest, reinvest, and expand on this investment of sports tourism? So we've got 3 topics we're going to cover here. We're going to do it relatively quickly. More quickly if Jess can kick me out, because she'll be briefer, brighter, and then we'll move on. But one is, what do we do with the 21 acres? Because that is a unique asset that the city has available to make a decision about. Secondly then, we're just going to give an update that we've been engaged by Visit Myrtle Beach to look at the assets countywide, I would say. Do a gap analysis. What do we have? What don't we have within that area? And what would it cost to invest in new construction and or renovation of existing to maximize the potential of what the county has. So I guess there's your update. We've got a slide for it. And then thirdly, within the sports center itself, we're looking at enclosing a patio space, and we have maybe 20 seconds of a slide. But those are the 3 topics to update you on. So going to the 21 acres here, which is what we're calling the ancillary development option. This is what we evaluated for those 21 acres. You can see the bullets here. More indoor assets, court assets, with some flexibility and diversity that you'll see in a second. Secondly, some more outdoor fields. We look at long, rectangular, multi-use fields. We look at diamond fields. I think Tim did a really good job defining the differences between those. Pickleball and tennis, racket sports. 4th, indoor aquatics, natatorium. 5th, indoor ice. And then 6th, indoor track and field. So we actually evaluated a couple of other things that didn't really make a cut for your time today. But it was a holistic approach in terms of what we evaluated. So in looking at the new facility options, you can see the outline of the property that we're talking about here. The sports center at the bottom of the screen. Y'all are probably familiar with it. Option 1, we're going to give an overview, and then we're going to get to a ranking and a recommendation. That's where we're headed. An additional indoor event facility. Not as large as the sports center, but something that has, call it 4 more courts, with some flexibility, with more spectators seating, that provides diversity for all types of programs, activities, sports and events, but can also be then utilized for some sort of championship event, state sort of event, or even some sort of concert and entertainment if that's something that the city would have interest in. Anything you'd add there?
No, I'll wait till the next slide. The one more.
Okay. So we have an example. This is the Rocky Mount Events, half of the Rocky Mount Events Center, but that was the photo we just looked at. Just to give you an example, I don't know that we need this much infrastructure and whatnot, but it kind of gives you a visual for what we're talking about. Maybe some additional meeting space that we use at the sports center that's useful, revenue generating. And then Jess, you can.
Yeah, I was just going to add on to what really Dustin and Tim had said, is that we do need the additional court space, especially for Alex Singh, who's local, that comes in, uses the convention center, the sports center, and some outside facilities. We also use Horry County schools in some instances, and then city buildings. So this is a great opportunity to expand the weekly youth local sports, as well as growing our economic impact and having these 4 additional courts. And it's all on one campus. And it just creates a better guest experience if we are using for Winter Bump, the convention center, the sports center, and now we've got a brand new 4-court facility. It'll bring other events, to Tim's point earlier, to backfill those tournaments because we don't have any inventory at the sports complex. This will help us bring in bigger economic impact drivers on that smaller shoulder season weekends.
So Jess just alluded to, for each of these options, these are the 5 criteria that we evaluated. You can see them on the screen here. The first is visitor spend or economic impact. We're interchanging those. Tim probably gives you a little bit of a nervous tick.
Who's on
yeah. But that's one. How are we driving economic impact and visitor spend? So that's one. Two, how does it perform financially? Bottom line, right? Is it sustainable and scalable, or do we need to continue to subsidize something? So that's the second. Third, does it serve an existing community need? We just went through the waiting list on a bunch of different sports. How does each of these help with the existing community need? Four, how much capital is required? Some of them cost more than others. That's a factor. Fifth, does it create new community sport opportunities that maybe the community doesn't have at this point? So just so you know, those are the 5 criteria for each of these that we looked at and evaluated. So you can see an overview here of cost, economic impact, financial performance. This generally will get to a break-even sort of thing. What's the annual economic impact look like, and then some notes. So that's the overview. As you flip through here, you'll see for each of these options. So we looked at outdoor fields as well, a mix of multi-sport, diamond. You can see some examples here. For the size of this site, 21 acres, really what we can get on there are 4 full-size, high school-size diamonds that you can then play out of the corners to get 8 fast pitch, youth, girls fast pitch, or Little League fields as well. So again, you can see here we've got an overall cost. We've got what's it look like, a subsidy going into break even then operationally. What's the economic impact look like? And then what some of the advantages are, right? And notes for this that you can see with each of these. So this is the format we've got for all of the options that we're going to demonstrate. Anything that you would add here? A lot of advantages to this as well, especially given some of the previous slides we looked at. I mean, Myrtle Beach is a baseball fast pitch diamond sport mecca. This is not good. For those of you that knew Deb Patique early on 10 years ago, he used to say, be what you is. That's not good grammar, so we fired Deb. But what we're saying is, be who you are. Deb still lives. He's great. But anyway, we are really good at diamond sports here. And so this is something that could expand in that. We looked at pickleball and tennis. We looked at covered spaces for pickleball and tennis. There are a number of ways you can design and develop these facilities, as you would imagine. But you can see we have a cost here. We looked at 32 pickleball, 32 tennis courts. We're developing a couple of these across the country right now. I think everybody knows from a community usage what's needed here. I'm guessing I was in one city council meeting, and that was driven home to me. And the one that I listened to, the pickleball players, some of which are probably in here, are passionate. So you can see what some of those advantages are for this particular usage. We'll talk about the pros and cons in just a second here. We evaluated an auditorium as well, indoor aquatics. So it's about 60,000 square feet. You'd say, if you're going to do it right, 50-meter pool with some flexibility there, diving well, and some other things. They come at a pretty hefty price tag, just so everybody's aware. And again, we'll look at these compared with one another. They also require a significant financial subsidy, so that everybody is aware. One of the things that we say is that if you're utilizing water, either moving or frozen, you're going to pay for it. And that's certainly the case with an natatorium in the Myrtle Beach market. Really any natatorium that doesn't have a membership component and some other things to help pay for it. So this one would have a significant ongoing subsidy, so that's something to keep in mind. Option 5 is ice. The interesting thing about ice is it can be highly profitable in terms of contributing to the community. We are running some rinks where it's profitable to the tune of 7 figures, bottom line, for those communities. They happen to be in a more dense population than what we have here in Myrtle. Not necessarily here, but there in Myrtle. And it also it's muted a little bit in terms of the economic impact opportunity. You can only get two sheets, right? Otherwise, if you put 3 sheets in, it gets very expensive to build. 2 sheets doesn't really allow you the surface depth to run any sort of big tournament that's really going to move the needle from an economic impact standpoint. So the question then is, if it's not a real economic impact driver, does it satisfy the community need, and do we have a lot of ice players in the community? Our initial analysis of Myrtle is that there aren't that many that it really would drive a profitable venture here. So it's an initial subsidy that you could probably build a following and build a program over time, 5 or 10 years, and get to a break even. But it would be a muted economic impact. So again, those are just some of the factors as it relates to ice. And then we looked at an indoor track. We're managing Virginia Beach's indoor track. There are a couple of others that we work with. They can drive pretty good economic impact, especially if you put flexibly over that. If you do hydraulic banking, where the track comes down and you can put sport to do volleyball and wrestling and some of the other sports over the top. It just also comes at a bit a heftier price tag than what the initial event center did as well. So those are the 6 options. I'm happy to walk through more in depth any of that. I'm trying to give a high-level overview. Is there anything you would add before I go to the comparison?
You're on it.
Keep rolling. Keep rolling. Okay, here's a summary of this, side by side. So this is a bit of the punchline. You can start to see the indoor event facility, how many acreage it takes up, what the cost is, and you can compare all of those things. The financial performance you can see from break-even to a subsidy to break-even to a significant subsidy, so you kind of see the range of how that's all coming together. And then what does the visitor spend look like? Now this is a typical range. We analyzed this. There is possibly more upside in a few of these examples, but we didn't want to, I guess, overpromise here. This is a good, solid industry range of what you can expect, for any of these. So the question is, okay, what do you recommend? One thought here is, first of all, if you chose one of these, it's a little smaller on the acreage side, you could probably sprinkle in some components from another one as well. We would just need to look at what would that hybrid look like on the 21 acres. It may scratch the itch on what the waiting list looks like on the community, as you start to mix some of these together. So it's something we can evaluate. But we ended up putting a scoring table together. Here's the ranking criteria, which I read earlier. I'm just going to put that up for a second, just to make sure everybody understands the definition of each of these. And as we looked at those, not all are created equally, right, in terms of what the characteristics of these are. So we weighted them actually 1 through 5 right here. So the highest weight is what's going to drive visitor spend, tourism into the community. Right behind that, I call it 1B, 1A and 1B, is what's the financial operating performance here. It's something that I know Fox has hammered into me, especially over the last few years. Hey, these things need to be able to pay for themselves operationally here. We don't want to keep throwing money, plugging money. I hope that's a fair statement, Fox. So, yeah. So make sure they work in that way. So that's the second piece. Thirdly, what's that waiting list? What's the existing community need? And what's the capital required? It may be feasible, but we don't want to spend $150 million here. We want to, put a reasonable investment in. And then lastly, and it is the last one in the waiting, is, hey, how could it create a new sport opportunity for us that maybe we don't have a need for currently, but it would be nice to be able to provide for our community as we move forward. Still important, but maybe not as important as the others, if that makes sense. Okay. Punchline. All right, so here's where we landed. The weighted score all the way on the right factors in the weighting for each of these. So that's how we got there. I share that with you in the event you have a difference of opinion on what should be most important, because it would jumble the results a little bit. But ultimately where we landed, and I think Jess let the cat out of the bag. She was selling the indoor event facility a little bit. But the indoor event facility landed on top. It has the highest visitor spend for what can be built out there. If we could do more baseball fields as an example than just the 4 and fit that, if we had more than 21 acres, that would be a little bit more compelling. But the fact is we have kind of just 21 acres on this particular site that we're looking at. So as you can see here, you start to see the weighting based on a scale of 1 to 10, how each of these kind of rank out from that perspective, and ultimately then where we landed with the weighted score. So as you all, we're just providing data and information, you know, that's what this retreat's about. As you dig in and you think about, well, what if we combine, I'm gonna make this up, an indoor event facility with just 2 outdoor fields? Could we fit that? Or could we fit an indoor event facility, you know, with a few pickleball courts? And I mean, you all can make the decision. I know there are a couple of private developments on the pickleball and tennis side as well. May not be, you know, what you all decide to do with additional courts. It may be because the community needs it. What I would say is this, when you look at the bottom 2 here, indoor ice and indoor aquatics, we run these. They are awesome program generators and service providers to the communities that we run these in. We have a very specific aquatics division and ice division within our firm. So don't go back to them and tell them I don't love them. But at Myrtle Beach here, if economic impact is part of the rationale and justification for the investment, these fall to the bottom of what we've evaluated and analyzed here. Because you just can't drive enough usage. When you think about how many teams play on a baseball field over a 12-hour period with lights, or on basketball, volleyball court, versus the number of swimmers you can get in a meet. Or same with ice. If you can only do 2 sheets of ice, you really got 4 teams on that ice at once. Except the little guys and gals are running the other way, but you get the point. It just really kind of falls to the bottom there. And then when you layer in what it costs to subsidize the operation for each of those, that's the reason they fall to the bottom. They have a place and they have a time for sure. It would just be one that I personally wouldn't recommend, given what the goals and objectives are here for the city in Myrtle Beach. But then when you look at the rest of them, it's okay. What's the right mix and match for what we're trying to accomplish here? So anyway, those are our findings as we share them with you here. Moving on from that, this is an overview of that study that we've just been engaged by Visit Myrtle Beach to look at. So we're doing a gap analysis across the market. We're identifying based on what the sports tourism trends are, what could be a good fit for coming in here, and then what's the cost, right? New facility recommendations, and then what's the cost, financial and economic impact potential, and ROI on doing those. So that's probably a 90-day, 60 to 90-day process that we're moving into here. We're just kicking off, just so you're aware of that timeline. And then, Jess, anything you want to add there?
We're going to start meeting on that, I think, next week with Visit Myrtle Beach. So I'll be a big part of that as well. So we'll bring in Mark Beal to help with that as well.
Perfect. And then the third topic that we shared with you is as we're moving into our 10-year anniversary, and we are at capacity at the Sports Center. This happens to be a space, for those that are familiar with the Sports Center, that is a little underutilized, and we're just evaluating what some uses are there, what some costs are, what the return on investment would look like for if we enclose that patio, and what we would do with it. So this is a bit preliminary, but again, we had your ear, so we just thought we would share. These are some of the things that we're evaluating as we move forward. Anything in closing? Nope. Jess? Okay. Josh, thoughts?
Yeah, I do have a question for you. I noticed that when you're looking at the cost, you have one cost for capital investment, and then you have a separate cost for your operations. So you consider those two separate and distinct, regardless of the fact that there probably is going to be some debt service associated with that initial capital investment.
That's right. Yep. Just to show it here, that you're exactly right. So here's the capital required. Some of it could be whatever the debt, right? Whatever the source of that capital is, and then apart separate from that, the financial performance is what's going to drive the best outcome financially within that account.
I don't know. I think the indoor event facility makes a whole lot of sense on our campus. But whatever you might think about in the future, parking has to be, we're at our maximum now, so that's not part of the equation.
I can just think I can say so. I don't know.
Oh,
We
sure.
should hear you.
Whatever, the indoor event facility, the sports center has been great.
Yes, and we do. What we're finding, I would say, Mayor, 5 years ago, the pickleball players, if they have no other option, they'll play on the hardwood for sure. As they're getting more, I don't know, particular? Yeah, they prefer to play on the surface that they would more. When we run national or regional pickleball sports tourism events in hardwood facilities, we have to bring in a surface to put over the hardwood. But for day-to-day usage, a lot of pickleball players are okay playing on the hardwood. That is something, if we wanted to hybrid some pickleball courts with the indoor event piece, I think that would work. We've got the space for that, making sure that we have enough parking as well as we look at the site.
And an additional comment, an additional indoor event facility could give us some more capacity at the convention center for trade shows and conventions, which we're really designed to do. Not that we just want to move one event from one facility to another, we want to bring in more events, but it could help us in that regard.
When you say that pickleball players want a surface, is that a tennis court, hard court, tennis court, clay court, or something different?
Hard court.
Hard court surface.
For this competition, yeah, very similar to that. I mean, on the rec side, feel free to jump in on that, but that's typically what they prefer. Yes, sir.
I noticed there's no mention about esports at all. Some time ago, we were talking about esports, and it was just like on the rise.
Yeah.
And what makes me think about it, they just had an esports tournament out here at the Broadway at the beach.
The hangout,
At the hangout. Where's that at today?
It's a hit and miss right now. So we just put esports in at Cedar Point, and it does okay. So the participation for esports continues to rise. The need for a destination location that would drive economic impact is what's hit and miss. So a lot of kids and adults playing right now, a lot. And what we found is we can actually put together at times a digital or virtual tournament for esports. Well, we've got a physical tournament going on with the actual sport. But the need for a unique destination to bring everybody together is more limited than it even was 5 years ago when we were first talking about it. It is still an opportunity. It still happens in a couple of our venues for sure. And I still get a call every month from somebody who's the next great esport thing. But I think you'll even find, 5 years ago, a lot of these major league owners in quote NFL, NBA, they're like, we're investing in, we're getting into esports and into esport franchises. Those investments have not paid off for them. So they're exiting out of those at this point. So it's the Wild West, still trying to figure it out.
Did you, one of the ones that didn't make, two of the ones that didn't make your ranking, was it a velodrome? Did you consider that?
We did not.
How about a TGL arena?
We could. We did not evaluate that either, no.
What is that?
Velodrome? Oh, indoor bicycle. It's the new golf thing.
Oh, I have.
They were both jokes.
On ESPN, the Tiger indoor arena thing.
To be clear, they were both jokes.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I have a question, in case I get any questions on this. You mentioned the indoor track and possibly lift up. So if that lifted up, would that be fields, like for indoor soccer, indoor lacrosse?
You would have it'd be flat, and then the banks for an indoor track come up out of the ground. So that when you have a track event, it's typically indoors 200 meter, a 200 meter track. And so they bank up, and then when you're not running the track event, they come down and provide the flat floor for other types of events. You write wrestling mats over them, or you bring
Okay, so no field,
No.
no indoor field.
No, we could, we've done some indoor turf on pallets that you can come out and put over the top. The challenge with indoor turf, which we didn't evaluate here because we kind of already knew the answer, is very similar to hockey in that to do any sort of depth of tournament, you have to have a lot of fields, which is why the outdoor fields work really well in Myrtle Beach. But you can't really build a big enough indoor turf space that's going to drive, 8 fields worth of tournaments and events. It's just cost prohibitive and it wouldn't fit on this site. So if we were going to do indoor turf in pallets and just put it over some courts or over an indoor track, it would be to help with the recreation and local usage side, not necessarily economic impact.
I was just curious what other sports you meant.
Yeah, it's a good question.
I mean, I don't know, but I've always heard that girls' sports, they bring more people with them, they stay longer, they spend more money. Is that factored into your?
It is. Inherently into the numbers and the financial performance, economic impact and the financial performance, the assets here that facilitate the girls' sport, and you're absolutely right, the girls' sports will drive the higher economic impact and the higher financial performance. And Tim was 1,000% right with the explosion in girls' flag football right now. I mean, it is exploding across the country. So that's one that we're taking advantage of in a number of events that we're in.
What type of field does that look like?
For flag?
Yeah, the traditional football field, 100 yard?
2 to 1,
Yeah.
generally,
Yeah.
2 flag fields on a traditional football.
Do they fit Buddy Steyer's, ran Buddy Steyer's athletic complex, those fields?
Yes. Be similar to when we do 7-on-7 now at Steigers, where we were able to put 2 7-on-7 football fields in the outfield of the 7 large diamonds. So we do 14 7-on-7 fields. So similarly, we could do 7-on-7, 14 flag football fields at Steigers.
Does that field dimension change with age group?
Does.
A little bit.
Yeah. So Tim's talking about the collegiate and high school, which there's a lot going on. The youth, we're working with Under Armour, Under the Lights, and NFL Flag. They run crosswise of a normal football or soccer field, and you could do 3 for the youth. So call it K through 2, 3rd and 4th, and then 5th and 6th. 7th and 8th starts to get to the larger size.
And the seniors have a smaller field.
And an orthopedic center right next to it.
There you go, that extra 15 acres.
There you go.
What, in terms of girls' youth sports, travel sports, is it volleyball, is that the big one?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, volleyball, cheer, and dance. We'd love to have Brian's, all his dance competition come over.
And dance continues to grow, and like cheer, the companies are kind of getting together and blocking out other events. So it's an interesting time.
Yeah.
But dance is exploding even more so.
That's on the indoor side, and then on the outdoor side, flag, which we just talked about, fast pitch is exploding in softball. I mean, it's massive. Beautiful.
Brian,
Yes, ma'am.
how much glitter does girls?
It increases vacuum.
Do we have any cheer parents in here? Are there any?
Used to be.
It is as large of investment as a family and parent as ice hockey is for equipment. It is, and just to get in, the ticket to get in, it's like $50 a day per family member. They come and watch. I mean, and they pay. Yeah, they pay.
We love glitter.
As we're closing up, one of the things I think as we think about the 21 acres is, and I let it off with Dustin's on purpose, is we do a very good job of doing 2 for 1, especially at Steyers and at Donville where we use it for our recreation, and we also complement for sports tourism. I think it's very important as we continue to think about that 21 acres as we keep in mind multiple uses for it. Try to do 2 birds with 1 stone sort of thing as much as we can.
And that's what we tried to cover here with the serve existing community need. Dustin was on the phone calls, right, and in the middle of it as we were evaluating these options. So as we massage this, as you get the data, as you ask questions and think about the right use, happy to the sounding board and participate.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Sir?
Did they factor in the cost of having to remove all that dirt?
I don't know if we got that granular.
We saw the slides yesterday from Chris Finney. If you remember when he looked at the growth sectors, if you will, inside the city limits, you saw really dark blues on the north end and you saw really dark blues on the south end. And the middle sections of the city were still white, where we're either not seeing the same growth or we're actually still losing population in the middle for the south end. And obviously that's one of the biggest factors that drove the Arts Innovation District plan. As we continue to shift, or as we are shifting from executing on the public investment, we're now shifting gears, at least on the planning side, to prepare for the private investment to move in to the A&I district. And we'll hear from Devin and Jason here in just a minute. One of the questions that we still continue to ask is, why aren't we seeing the investment? And it's not because we don't know, it's because we just want to be able to articulate that why. And one of the biggest things is really one, and it's risk. Nobody wants to be the first one downtown to do a big thing. We feel like we're setting the stage with the public investment to really do that, but there's still a certain element of risk there. So as we start shifting, the other piece of the puzzle that we've said for the last day and a half is also the cost, right? There's still a cost element there. As we've talked about before in other settings, rents downtown compared to rents in Market Common and rents on the north end are still not the same. Right? It costs you the same to build something in Market Common as it does on 9th Avenue, but the rent structure is still very different. So we're continuing to move into that. What we're going to hear from Devin and Jason is just sort of a conversation about a couple of near-term opportunities for us to look at vacant buildings, abandoned buildings, underutilized buildings, and then also start to look at a larger development structure for incentives and what that looks like in other places, how that is stacked, where the sources come from, and that's again more from an educational standpoint at this point. But we wanted to just set that up before Devin starts, Jason starts. All right.
Good afternoon, everyone.
I was weak.
Try again.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. I know it's after lunch, and I might be the most boring speaker you hear all day, but I want to talk a little bit about incentives and kind of what all that means. But before I get into that, I want to say a big thanks to the Parks Department. And my daughters participated in the Pepper Getting Summer and Winter League. They absolutely loved the experience. They made the all-star team. Unfortunately, they lost to North Myrtle Beach in the first game to start the tournament. But they had a wonderful experience, and I'm so grateful that they love basketball now. My oldest daughter told our pastor she wanted to be at the WNBA. I just hope she's taller than me and she grows up. So the incentive side, on the why side, why incentives are important is they're designed to really motivate behavior, right? You're trying to get private investment and establish public-private partnerships. And they also, to Brian's point, to mitigate investment risk into what's happening in downtown. How you do that, they're really best when layered, like a cake. So kind of think of all the ingredients you have to put together to make a cake and stack it up with icing and everything else that you're doing. And the best practice is that cities do not do this alone at all. Use the county, the school board, the state, the federal government a lot of the time to kind of fill in the gaps when you're building an incentive package. So you align multiple programs to be able to do that. You certainly see some good success on 9th Avenue North here with what the buildings looked like before the city bought them and then what they look like after the investment that the city made. So you see that the investment that was made mitigated the risk, and now we have a very thriving 9th Avenue corridor right now with plenty of shops and restaurants and certainly the co-working space that's there now. So it's important for the investment to happen so that we can guide the incentive moving forward. There's really two buckets to this, though. There's revitalization incentives, which Devin will cover in just a moment, which encourage the revitalization and kind of increase that near-term vibrancy that we're looking for, driving more economic development inside the downtown. And then part two is about the redevelopment component, the new investment that would create long-term vibrancy, more permanent resident base in downtown over time. On the revitalization side, we are working with a company called Town Center Associates. They evaluate our downtown in many ways. And this slide kind of shows when investment's not made with respect to incentivizing economic development, you can see changes. Can you guess which one did not do economic incentives to try to drive businesses into their downtowns? And it's very clear that Mount Lebanon in this particular effort in 5 years' time had virtually no movement with respect to economic development because of no investment. In our downtown, from their evaluation, looking at the A&I district and a portion of the C7 on Broadway Street, we have 42 units vacant and 3 for sale right now in the downtown. So it's a pretty large vacancy rate, and it's probably better served looking at this in terms of what we have. In the current column here, you see how much retail, food and drink, and personal services and arts and entertainment we have. But we also have a very large number of office, miscellaneous, and vacant space being the largest piece that we have. Ideally, you want to move that all up and be on the top 4 eras of this piece up here and moving that up. And the question that Brian and Deb and I talked about is why hasn't that moved? And that has not changed a lot over the last few years. So that's something that is important to kind of note of where we need to go in terms of driving the vibrancy in downtown. So I'm going to turn it over to Devin to talk about a couple of slides here.
Afternoon. I'm actually going to back up a little bit because I do feel that this slide is pretty important. So you're looking at roughly 200 units in the downtown area, of which 42 are vacant. It's one thing to have vacancy, but the fact that there's only 3 publicly listed is a problem. It's stagnant. So everything we're encouraging today is to create movement.
Devin, can you speak up a little bit?
Sure.
Please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There we go. So we want to get that vacancy percentage down, right? As that number goes down, the rest go up. So what are some opportunities or incentives that we can pursue that won't necessarily break the bank and yet move the needle? Just like Jason touched on, what we did on 9th Avenue is an incentive. We incentivized and we mitigated risk, and as a result, we've got tenancy. So how can we empower the private community to do the same as we've been doing? Our solution, and it really boils down to 2 different opportunities. One is encouraging tenant infill without creating or having to pull from a pot of money. So in terms of a fee reimbursement, we're proposing a vacant storefront incentive to support revitalization of downtown C7 and Art District. So those are the 2 districts we're focusing on right now, to encourage private business owners to fill vacant buildings. And then on the flip side, this would require pulling from a pot of money, but a facade improvement grant. So if we want our commercial property owners downtown to have tools in place to improve the odds of them having a tenant, it works hand in hand to offer some initiatives to improve a facade as well. So what we're proposing with the vacant storefront incentive is a fee reimbursement mechanism. So for example, out of those 42 vacant units that we have right now, how much did you get in business licenses from them last year, Jeremy? From 42 empty buildings? Not nothing, right? It's semantics, yeah. the number I was looking for was 0. But at the end of the day, these are fees that we are not getting right now. So this is not pulling from a different pot of money. This is revenue that we currently aren't receiving to a certain extent. Some of the opportunities for fee reimbursement are tap fees, connection fees, business license fees for a certain duration of years. The facade improvement grant is a little bit on the other side of the fence. What we're proposing is taking some of the funding that we have through the Cultural Resources Committee and offering a matching grant for facade improvement. So when you think of a downtown area, you're thinking small business, right? These aren't our national chains. These are representatives from our community. And sometimes they need a hand, whether it be the awnings in disarray, whatever the case may be. There's a lot more motivation on their end to improve some of the facade of their properties by putting in, if we're willing to match whatever they're putting in. Now, there will be some more details. There will be caps. we don't want to spend all of this money on one project. We want to spread it out and allow several businesses to use this opportunity. But in the same way that we've incentivized 9th Avenue, we're looking to do the same for private. So 2 examples kind of make it a little more tangible. One, the example on the left is a mixed-use project, 2-story, and then the project on the right is a restaurant on Broadway Street. And just as an example, some of the fees that they've incurred to open and become operational, what we're proposing is reimbursing some of those fees. So they still pay all of their fees, all of their business license fees, property taxes, but we give the opportunity for a rebate after the fact. And we're going to pause just for now if you have any questions about how we're looking at revitalizing existing commercial. Next step is we're going to talk about how do we incentivize new development and why. Yes, sir.
Go back to the part about they're paying their fees, but then talk about the rebate part.
Oh, this slide?
Yes.
Yes, sir. So if,
What particularly do you want to dig into?
Well, like, you talking about they were gonna pay these fees, but then there will be a rebate. So you get a rebate. So I just wanna understand, make sure I understand what we're talking about the rebate.
sure, so let's, under the assumption that we're talking about a vacant piece of property, right? So we're not receiving tap fees or a full business license fee as a result of,
Time out 1 second.
Yep.
We are receiving taxes on that property.
yes,
Thank you.
yes. We are receiving taxes. So the taxes is a fee reimbursement that it's a tool we can use. That is that is a fee that it doesn't exist, or it does exist as it stands, empty, not empty. But as far as, yep.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think Councilman McCoy, you made the question, how much? Is that your question?
Yeah, well, I just thought we
I see
needed
it by,
to
you know,
get a better
the
explanation
3-year
about what
incentive.
this is about.
You know, versus a 5-year incentive.
But I think what we're trying to get from you guys now, is this a concept you want us to pursue? Because we haven't determined yet whether or not we rebate 20% or 50% or 100%. We don't want to go that far down the path if this is not a concept you want us to pursue, I guess.
I need more, I can't tell you right this second. You need an answer from me right now. It's
No,
like,
And to add to your contemplation,
did you say mine?
your contemplation of this fee, to add to your consternation, the tap fee, the ERU fee, those things are paid to the water and sewer fund. We cannot credit those from the water and sewer fund, so we will have to replace that with general fund revenue. So just think about that as you consider these fees.
And we do need to dig in. This is strictly for example purposes. So these are 2 parcels that within the last 5 years have been redeveloped. So all of these fees are based on the project cost.
And I just received, Councilman Condon actually watched in the meeting through live stream. And she just texted me and said that she would like to talk about also, if we're gonna do something like this about in that downtown area along the businesses along Highway 17 as well.
And I think that is an opportunity. We don't have anything that exists as it stands. I think if you're looking for a sample size, the Art District and the C7 District, based on vacancy, is the location to start. If it's successful in that location, or we could do it all at once. You know, the options are there.
A number of these conversations started several months back. We had gotten word from you all, you made a couple of comments about some of the fees that were being paid by some of the small business owners trying to move into either Broadway or other places in the city. And so we've been trying to figure out how we can work with the small business folks to help give them a hand as they try to set up shops.
This wouldn't necessarily be a grant. It would be money that we would do that with, but eventually they would pay that money back to the city.
Can be, if that's how we want to set it up. I mean, that, at this point, we can set it up in a number of different ways, whether it's a grant, whether it's a forgivable loan. We need to know from you all on how aggressive you want to be, I guess is the best way to put it.
I think the answer to that for me would be how many and how much.
Brian, would it help, I think it would help me, maybe it would help others, and even those who may be watching this, to give a little perspective of how many other cities that have gone through revitalization have done incentives like this. Sometimes we get accused of putting too much money focused in downtown versus all over the city. And I think it's important to explain how downtown affects the entire city. To give a little context to this discussion about this is not just handing money out, what is this going to do for our entire community?
Well, I think to that point, and then both of them can speak to your first question, but to your second point, we're focusing on this area because this is the area that's not growing by itself. Right now, again, North End and Market Common and parts of the South End are growing naturally because there's a demand to be there. The middle, where we're investing our time and energy, we're investing our time and energy there because we're not seeing growth there. We've seen a couple of decades of neglect in that part of the city that we're trying to turn around. It doesn't happen quickly, and these are tools that we have to try to reverse that direction. I think both of them can speak to the other places that do similar things.
And to Dr. Connor, and Mike, I think you feel this way too, because we talked about it. Kings Highway, our main corridor, where all of our visitors travel, there needs to be some love there too, and especially on the south end. When you look from, where 9th Avenue down, Family Dollar down, south. I don't think we should just limit it to A&I and Broadway. I think we need to look at what are our visitors seeing when they're here.
This is the kind of feedback we need so that we can start putting some detail together.
Mayor, thank you for bringing up about Broadway. Now, if you look at Broadway, if you drive down Broadway today, versus driving down Broadway 10 years ago, there is a huge difference on Broadway. There are businesses open. There are people who have come in there and invested money. Private sector has invested money. We've invested money in streetscape and some other things. However, the businesses themselves, the buildings themselves have been improved by the private sector. And let me say this here, they've done a really good job, including maybe a person in the room. But I will say this, that I keep going back to this, and do I want to see this take place? I do. But I just don't want us to keep thinking that we have got to put the money up for this to happen when we've seen the very thing you're talking about taking place is took place on Broadway. And like I said, the only investment we did on Broadway was streetscape. So I don't understand why, I guess, if private investors wanted to invest in Broadway, that's still downtown. So that is growing.
Mike, I'll just say that private investments on Broadway, much of them have been because the people love the city and they have not been wise financial decisions. So other people are not going to invest on Broadway.
They may not.
And a lot of those investors on Broadway are the same people that have bought multiple buildings because they believe in the overall vision that we all put forth.
Sure.
And when you look at Kings Highway and you look at other parts of the city where we're not seeing that investment, it's generational ownership or absentee owners who don't live here and just don't hear.
And both of those are going.
And I think
small business owners who went down there. I mean, just about had to, what's the word? Hawk their house and.
Mortgage their life.
Mortgage their, I mean, in order to get there. It was tough. I mean, I know just from talking with one in particular, I mean,
In that one in particular, we had to be creative and figure out how to help.
Exactly.
Without these tools in place, it was, I think MBDA actually came along and helped with a grant for that particular one that you're talking about to help cover some of the impact fees and some of the review fees.
And as long as that's what we're doing, and as long as that we're not, as long as we're helping and not.
What was the total investment on those two projects?
So the mixed-use development in the art district was 1.84 million. Broadway Street, 600,000.
I mean, that's still a fraction. I mean, what you're seeing there is a fraction of what the private business owner is actually investing in their property. And so it's,
I guess what I'm hearing is that we really need to bring the private sector to the table. We need to be at the table with the private sector, partnering, but not subsidizing. Does that make any sense to you? What Mr. Louder said, right? Streetscape, underground infrastructure needs, those type of things, but then let them come in. And you're talking about this, but what happens when Joe Doe's dry cleaner says, well, you've got this vacant area, you've got it already done and built out, and I want to put a dry cleaners in there. Is that okay? Well, I mean, it's the A&I district, so
you're asking, can you put a dry cleaner there?
can you put a dry cleaners in there?
I don't know, I think
yeah, on Broadway.
you can on Broadway for sure.
Well, Broadway,
No.
yeah, but
Rural Cleaner is in the A&I district. That doesn't mean that they've been there since before, but that's a personal service, right? Yeah.
The only limitation, like we said about no drive-throughs.
Right, no drive-throughs allowed in the
Like
A&I
we said
district.
about the no drive-throughs in there.
That's the extent of it. Okay. And so yes, that's the question.
I mean, I think there's either a perception or a misunderstanding on the part of some small business folks that, unless they're going to put something artsy-craftsy in the A&I district, they're not going to be allowed to have a business or a retail facility.
Okay, okay. I have not heard that.
I have. And that's just because we need to let them know if it's open business.
We can do that.
But what this it's a reimbursement that you're not pitching, but even just like putting out there for us. And you're saying that these people paid these fees. We're talking about possibly giving them back some of these fees that they paid. So when they go into it, they know, well, I'm going to have $64,000 in fees, but if I apply for this and I get accepted, then the city might pay me back
Maybe I get half of that.
$10,000, $20,000 of those fees.
Yes.
And it may not seem like much at face value, but I've seen it move the needle significantly. The vacant storefront one in particular is very similar to the one I used in Conway. So that was some of the biggest retailers and restaurants downtown took advantage, and it really wasn't a big hit to the city. In fact, we made a lot more money as a result of that.
You use this in downtown Conway.
Yeah, I used
Got a
on
downtown
Jerry
Conway
Cox,
turnout.
former Abrams, Salvation Army.
Downtown
I've heard
Conway
it's all
doing all
right.
right?
I heard it's doing all right.
All right.
They're packed every weekend, just about every day.
And these incentives came out in 2018, which is, I mean, give or take a year, right around when you saw that movement starting.
Questions on these?
With our work with Town Center Associates, they work with about 150 communities, mostly in the kind of Pennsylvania, Ohio area, and some in the southeast. And from that data, they kind of suggest that these incentives do work for towns to drive vibrancy and do these sorts of things. We did consult with them in the two that were presented today in terms of just getting information and potential ways to write these things to make sure that they're done correctly. But that's an ongoing conversation that we're having with them. Now we're going to just switch to redevelopment. This is more of an educational kind of part of the presentation, just to talk about it in general. It's a very complex thing to look at this from a redevelopment standpoint. We've attempted to make this as simple as possible. So when we are talking with developers and investors about downtown and talking to them about other areas like Market Common, at least in this profile right here, is really a normal investment risk right now. Probably wasn't the case 30 years ago, but now it's a very normal investment risk. So we do know that what they look at is real estate comps are really well known, they have a really well-established history now, and the submarket is stable. We have several submarkets in Myrtle Beach, and Market Common is a very stable submarket right now. With respect to developers, they look at that and they look at known risks. They're looking at certain financial metrics, which I won't get into in this particular presentation, but the bottom line, when they do their financial crunching, their numbers pencil, and it's a worthwhile investment for them to do a project. When we look at areas like downtown Myrtle Beach, unequivocally, in talking to the dozen or so investment groups and developers I've talked to over the course of a couple of years, they consider downtown Myrtle Beach a very high-risk investment. And we're looking for pioneers and early adopters to come in and start to be that first one, that first private investment in downtown. The city's done a remarkable job on the public side, putting private or public investment into downtown to prepare for this. But we need those early adopters, those pioneers to come in and be that first private investment in downtown. Their challenges and why this is high risk is that the real estate comps are not established, or they're really kind of below market, as Brian mentioned earlier. And the submarket is relatively unknown. So when they look at that, you know, they're first in and they have unknown risk, therefore their risk profile goes up. They examine the same financial metrics and their numbers don't pencil when they do that, which you can kind of come to the conclusion that that investment is not going into downtown for those reasons. Like their numbers don't pencil, their risk is higher, therefore they're not making the investment, or their investors are encouraging, let's go invest in Market Common or in another city. So the incentives, they kind of cover the gap a little bit. They drive the competition for early private investment compared to other cities that are already doing the same. And they pave the way for long-term private investment over time. We certainly want the early and the first adopters to come in and do that. So the good thing is that this is not like forever, right? This has a short timeline associated with it where the high-risk investment profile exists, and then after a couple of few years, it drops pretty fast down to a normal investment once the comps are established, once the comps are up to market level in the entire market. So it doesn't take very long for that to happen once we start to see some density created for that to happen. And this is certainly not to scale, but generally it's about 5 to 7 years based on talking to a lot of different developers we've talked to in terms of when that risk profile drops. So it's a short period of time, and we would certainly not suggest doing it forever. We just want to get to the comps to market rate.
Jason, what do you consider that short period of time?
About 5 to 7 years in general is what we've heard. We've seen other markets do about the same. When we looked at Greenville specifically, their early years, they had some heavy public investment in. And then it took just a few years for that to happen. But that's generally what we've heard and have researched over the last couple of years.
Jason, what was their public investment in? Wasn't it more infrastructure related?
In some cases, yes, but they may do, and I think the investment here with respect to, like, let's use Oak Street, for example, you know, having the retention ponds off-site and doing that, that certainly creates a density that you would otherwise not have if you had to have a retention pond on a piece of property. So those are the kinds of things that help in terms of incentive. It's an incentive in its own right. So public investment into infrastructure is important. Land swaps, I'll have a slide that kind of gives a few examples of that, Bill, in just a second. But let's use Market Common, for example. If that same kind of quality of housing, I used a couple out there, found some averages from CoStar data. $1,743 a month is about the average for housing out in Market Common right now. But that's in a stable market. In a high-risk market, this is kind of where we are, if we want that same quality of housing in downtown.
Jason?
Yeah.
Just
Yes,
a
sir.
comment. With Market Common, the city of Myrtle Beach invested $45 million in infrastructure.
Mm-hmm. That's right. So these are all the considerations that a developer and investor would look at in terms of land and construction costs, high quality, cost of financing, and that return on investment are all things that they're looking at with respect. That's a very generic list, of course, but there's certainly a lot more things that go into that. But that's kind of the general things. The concerns that we have now is that land costs are high because our downtown is in a great place, close proximity to the ocean. It has its own challenges with construction. Construction costs are really high right now, too, compared to even 10 years ago. And we're kind of expecting a higher quality in downtown based on kind of what we currently have. So when we start adding all of that together, it creates a high risk, as we mentioned before, and we're trying to create a product that's very analogous to the quality that we're seeing in Market Common, perhaps, or maybe even a little bit better. This blue line here with the asterisk, that represents the average rents in Myrtle Beach, in downtown Myrtle Beach, in that submarket at $1,550 a month. So you can see that there's a disparity in terms of cost, in terms of what you can rent in downtown and what the averages are, and then what the expectation in terms of quality, in terms of the rent rates that a developer might be looking for. So that gap there, when they do their comps, those numbers don't pencil, as I mentioned before. So they choose not to invest in downtown as a result of that. So with the incentives and how you package all those together, and it's not just city only, it's lots of layers from the federal government all the way down to the local level. With those incentives, their numbers do pencil, and it certainly depends on the type of project you're looking at. Not all incentives are the same, but there's this idea that you want to be consistent with the way that you're doling that out, just to make sure that that works well for everyone. So the byproduct of that is that you establish new higher comps, and when those are finally established and stable, then you drive more private investment into downtown. So this is just a snapshot of the different programs that exist at all levels. I debated on whether or not I should do city first and not show the others. I just thought put it all on one slide so you can see the entire snapshot. But on the city side, you certainly have layers that you can do with respect to public infrastructure. Parking decks are certainly very popular in terms of an option in other communities as part of doing that for public benefit as well. Public amenities that may be associated with a specific project. Property concept development grants. If somebody has a vacant piece of land and they wanted to do a concept on that, but the architectural fees or the engineering fees might be a little bit more. Some cities do property concept development grants. Workforce housing incentives, which we've talked about before over the last few years, and the city's workforce housing program, that also helps. Community land trust that's currently between the city and the county being developed. That's certainly a program for land and programmatic components that could help folks get into housing. And then land swapping is certainly one of those things that can be done at the city level. There are certainly others that can be done, but those are the most popular ones that we have researched. At the county level, some of those are very similar to the city, school district as well. When you get into the state and federal level, direct infrastructure funding from the state, SC housing for special projects is another option. And then looking at other programs, including the Parks Department of the state, in terms of how they might do and help with some of the amenities that we're creating in the city as well. On the federal side, new markets tax credits, we have a really great kind of federal kind of designation with respect to redevelopment that I think is often overlooked. I know we've talked about this before, but the new markets tax credit program, those have very special projects that you can do, mostly mixed use, but have some tangible benefit in terms of creating some affordability or some public service. Opportunity zone, I put a question mark there because it does sunset in 2026. Unless the federal government decides to extend that. I don't think that's the most viable option right now, just because you don't have the length of time to be able to capture that, the benefit of that. And then there's certainly other federal programs like the National Endowment of the Arts or the DOT for the Rail to Trail and other pieces that can help with some of the other infrastructure pieces that we've talked about as well, to help with some of the amenities and that sort of thing. So with all of that, and just some example cities that have tapped into these layers: Virginia Beach in Virginia, Hickory in North Carolina, and certainly Greenville here in South Carolina, I think are great examples where multiple layers have come together to be able to do this. And with that, I'll just open it up for any discussion or questions that anybody might have.
I have a question, Fox and Michelle, based on a comment that Mr. Lauer made. Mike said that the city invested $45 million in market common and infrastructure. What was our return on the investment?
I don't know, we have numbers on that other than, there's $16 million of property tax revenue that came out of there. Jeremy, I asked you a while back, the business license revenue from the TIF. Do you remember?
Is it a spreadsheet out there?
We do have it, we do have it.
How much do you have in the?
I think I had Brooke and Devin help me figure out jobs, or at least people that go every day because of Placer. Do you remember? Yeah, we have it somewhere. So we have looked into that data.
I think it would be helpful because
To
we're
pay the
talking
debt,
about
the projects, yeah.
the investments we're making thanks to the state's help with our infrastructure. But it's also, we have made a lot of investment ourselves. And I think if we can look at a success story, which Market Common is a huge success story, it would help those of us on council to say, okay, at one time, we invested $45 million in something that was a big risk. Nobody knew that was going to be successful. And to say, now we're taking that investment and we're reinvesting here. So what did that do for this area? And I think that's a good comparison to have.
Well, I think there's a couple of different ways to go with that. For starters, number one, you can look at Market Common as an example. You can look at other cities that have done this as examples. The thing you will see from all of them is time matters, right? I mean, everybody loves talking about Greenville and how great Greenville is. Greenville's a 40-year success story, right? They worked for 30 years before they finally started moving the needle in the last 10. They made a tremendous amount of public investment 20 years ago and 30 years ago so that it could be the Greenville it is today. That is one of the biggest distinguishing factors between the public sector doing it and the private sector doing it. Private sector needs that immediate return on the dollar today. We have long-term perspective that if we make an investment today, it may take us 10 years to see the benefit, but when we see it, it will be sustainable and it will last. And that is the thing that we continue to remember. I would argue, if you talk to folks around the state, where the shift that we are already seeing downtown is happening faster than it happens in most places, because we have a tourism engine that drives 20 million people a year that is helping us escalate the success downtown. But, I mean, again, we've been at it for 5 years at this point. In earnest, where we've actually been spending money, doing work, making plans, and executing. We've been at this for 5 years. And so this is the next step. Again, as we start shifting away from what is the next public project and what is the next private project. We're shifting into a different phase of downtown redevelopment that we all want to see, and that is where the private money starts coming into the district. And again, similarly to what you saw on the other slide, that was the next one right there. Some of the investments that we looked at on Broadway Street, you're seeing a $600,000 investment, and you're roughly seeing 60% or $60,000 of that as a possible bank of incentives. Again, when you look at the percentage of money put into a project by private developer versus whatever the incentive is, it's still a fraction of the whole. And so it's, we have to play the long game. We have to be smart. We have to make sure we're asking the right questions, which we are. You are. But again, it's a long game, and you have to be persistent to let the work pay off.
Brenda, you asked a couple questions.
I was just buying every time.
Yes, thank you. So, the data that I have is purely business license data. And what it is data sensitive to the inception of market comment to now. And what all the businesses have generated in revenue. Now, this is not business license revenue. This is each individual business's revenue. And what it has become over the years, open or closed, since its inception. And those businesses have generated revenue of $3.2 billion.
3.2 billion?
Yes, ma'am.
There's 700 jobs in market
Let
common
me say
district.
this here, I won't argue that point one bit. It has become a very successful, as you look at market common district as a whole, it's become a very successful project here in the city. But what my point to all of that to start with was, we didn't put money into any buildings or anything like that. What we did was a parking garage and the infrastructure. Private sector did the rest of that. That's what I'm trying to.
And I don't know how that was put together, so I can't speak to that one way or the other. Okay.
Brian, would you be in favor of doing that type of thing? I mean, we are the A and I district, I mean, we're putting all kinds of infrastructure, all that, you know, take that and park it. Other areas of the city, rather than upfitting buildings, buying buildings, everything else. Just putting in the necessary infrastructure to make it viable for industry to come in and take over.
There's a qualifier there. Putting that public infrastructure in is going to be exponentially more expensive than doing some of the things we're talking about now. We spent a good bit of time today talking about the expense of public infrastructure. That's not cheap either. Right? So I mean, would I like to see that all over the city? Absolutely. Michelle might have a point here.
I'd like to see it, I just don't want to pay for it.
I guess, Brian, what I'm getting at though is that if there are areas in our city, you know, Kings Highway as an example, south, okay? And part of the equation is, hey, look, as a business owner, what would really help for me to get in here and invest and do what I need to do is you folks need to clean the sidewalk up, we need the sewer system needs to be cleaned up, that type of infrastructure. Then, because I don't want to go in and put my money in and then find out 2 years later that now we got to tear something up. You know, let's get that in place before I invest my money. That's what I'm talking about.
That would have an impact. There's still a certain level of risk, and I, again, to use Kings as the example, there's I would argue, a greater degree of risk from one property owner not knowing what the property owner next to him is going to do. We struggled with that mindset in the city at large for a long time. It's parceled out, it's so small. We have stretches like Kings where everybody's waiting on somebody else to do something. And until somebody does something first, everybody's going to be waiting. And you know, I would love to think that new streetscaping and new sidewalks along Kings would be enough, but I can't tell you that. Would I like to see it? Yes. Would it have an impact? Yes. Would it be enough to encourage private property owners to do something differently? I couldn't tell you that.
But potentially, if we extended an incentive program, then we do start to get a change on, let's use Kings Highway as an example. Once you generate those types of changes, that generates more revenue where potentially we can start to underground those areas and change the way the streetscape is. But this is just my opinion. 80% of our visitors drive here. They all drive on Kings Highway. What irritates me the most is what do our gateways look like in New York City? Are we the best we can possibly be? No, and it's not all on us. Part of it is on the property owners. And why shouldn't we give them an incentive to improve themselves? Because that raises their property value, but it raises the property values of everything around them. That's good for us. Does that make sense?
There where you talk about gateway, we really need to have some buy-in with the county. And hopefully some of these meetings gonna help with that.
It's also one of the first things on Fox's list is if we end up in a position where we have extra revenue, one of the first things on the list is an extra landscaping crew to focus on some of those areas. For that very reason.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you.
So Janet's gonna come up now. Y'all had asked a while back about, just sort of a deeper dive on impact fees. This is not a exhaustively deep dive. This is still a fairly high level, but it does sort of start an impact fee conversation about how we got here. So Fox is pulling up that road.
And I will,
What
add
about MDA
to the Kings Highway
the
conversation.
rest of us?
Remember, Kings Highway from Fair to 31st North is in RIDE 4. So that streetscape is included in RIDE 4.
On Kings Highway?
So that's another element.
Sharon to
31st. North. And that's like, I think it was 105 million in that project.
Do you remember what year was that in?
I haven't seen a implementation plan of which year it's going to fall, but it is one of the projects in my, so that's additional public money.
Thank you, Janet. That's good to know.
very good.
All right, got a new laptop. Just kidding. It's all good. All right, so I know it's late in the day, but I wanted to, as Brian said, give you a very high level
Corpero Corporate, 31st Avenue.
about impact fees and connection fees. As we're talking about development, and this is a nice complementary presentation to what you've already heard. Impact fees are essentially to offset the impact a development has on our water and sewer utility system. These are one-time charges on a property to fund that development's proportionate share of capacity in our water and sewer system. And these charges, similar to how you saw for stormwater where it has equivalent residential unit, these also have ERUs attached to them and calculations thereof. So now flip over to the other side and talk about connection charges. Connection charges are associated with anything and everything that we need to be able to have a development receive water and sewer service. all the labor, the equipment's used, the materials, everything. And these are driven by the development plans that we receive, that the engineer brings to us for our plan review process. Any questions about the difference between the two? So, we're not going to do all this math, it's late today, I understand that. But in order to calculate the impact fees, we need 4 things. We need a copy of Chapter 21 of our utilities ordinance. We need a copy of the latest budget ordinance. We need the details from the engineer, know more about the property use. And we need a calculator. All those things. So here are 3 examples that could come through for impact fees. And our impact fee for ERU values, you notice, are different between inside and outside of our city. Okay? So for a single family, 3-bedroom residence, to figure out the calculation, you have to go into our utility ordinance and find the 3-bedroom residence and recognize that that's 1 ERU. And simply multiply that by the rate that's in our budget ordinance. Same thing with restaurants. The utility ordinance gives you the calculation methodology for a restaurant, whether or not you have bar seats or dining seats. And it's a simple mathematical calculation based upon the details in the ordinance that'll give you 7.2 ERUs. Again, simple calculation of 7.2 times the water and sewer impact fees, total up, and that's how you get to the impact fee values. Retail is based on square footage. Square footage retail space is 0.33 ERU per 1,000 feet. And then do your multiplier on that 3.3 ERUs. Okay. So now connection fees. Very similar. You need to have your Chapter 21 utility ordinance, because it also will provide you with information on our utility deposit numbers as well. So looking back at that example of the 3-bedroom, they have to have a new meter. So we have a dollar value of $1,125 plus a $60 utility deposit. Those are the connection charges. And that's in addition to your water and sewer impact fee. So your development fee total is $6,400 for a single family. And that's assuming that they already have an existing sewer service. If they don't, then there's a connection fee for that sewer service in addition. But 8 times out of 10, there's already an existing sewer service at a lot of the locations here in the city due to redevelopment. So the same for a new restaurant. They're able to utilize the existing water and sewer connections. So the only thing that they would have to pay is the impact fee. And then for retail, they need a new 3-inch meter. And that's the corresponding dollar value and the corresponding utility deposit. That adds up to an almost $26,000 development fee dollar amount. And recognize that we had a conversation about infill development. When you change the use of property, let's say you go from a retail to a restaurant, you get a credit for the retail that you've already paid. So you build on it. It's not like it's an additive each time you change the use, because you've already made the property owner prior to you perhaps has already made that contribution into the system.
Back up.
Sure.
When you look at these fees, as we've looked at other fees, we've compared ourselves to other municipalities.
Yes.
Have we done that with these as well?
We did that back in 2022. I have a picture of a comparison on my phone. I can go back and reference it, but that was the value back in 2022. Since we did that study in 2022, in our budget ordinance, we have increased our impact fees 5% a year, every year. So that table is probably outdated, and we'd have to take another look.
And again, that's part of the puzzle here is how we get to these numbers is looking at various studies and looking at capital costs that would go into increasing and building new capacity. These numbers aren't pulled out of thin air. It's gonna cost us X amount of dollars to build a new plant. The capacity of that new plant will produce this much extra water. You break that down and it gives you how much it costs to serve that, how much capital you're gonna have to spend to serve every new house. That's essentially what the ERU number is. It's gonna cost you $2,300 in a new plant, a new water plant, new sewer plant, to create that same amount of capacity. So all of that tied back to the cost to increase your capacity.
Right.
So they're not standard by any stretch, because there are a lot of things that go into that, but they're all tied back to essentially construction costs.
Right, so it takes into consideration the treatment cost at the water, as Brian mentioned, the water treatment plant, the wastewater treatment plant, the existing cost of our infrastructure, what that investment cost is in the original assets, the fixed assets that we have, as well as our capital improvement plan. So there's like 3 components that get factored into deriving, if you want to use that term, the ERU values. And it's a blend of what's existing and what's planned.
I'm just concerned about when we look at restaurants. And you have on here one dining seat, almost $675. Every bar seat, $364.
Yep.
A small cafe, a small coffee shop that's independent, that's a lot of money.
And that's why we need those incentives.
Isn't that a one-time fee though? If a
It is.
restaurant paid that and another restaurant moved in, they would pay none of that.
They would get a credit for the seat capacity of the restaurant that was there before. So that's a very good point.
If there was a 50-seat restaurant that was replaced by another 50-seat restaurant, they would pay nothing.
Correct.
And if they reduce the seats to 40, there'd be a
There would be a credit, so maybe they, the all-in value on the development fee would be the difference there, right? So if they had to have a smaller meter, we've had situations where we have actually credited back. Okay. All right. And then this last slide was just to show you where this is that 5% increase of what the new impact fee per ERU would be. The top of this table is taking a look at the model from our consultant from 2023 and what they had projected as the revenues from the utility impact fees. They were very conservative, mind you. And then the bottom is our finance team assisted with grabbing the numbers for FY24 for a full year, and then through January for 25. So you can see how we're meeting those thresholds in the model with what we currently have. So be happy to answer any additional questions that you might have, or if you think of something later, just pull me to the side. I'll be happy to share it with you. But I will say that, as we've been talking about updating all of our fees. The last time we looked at our sewer connection charges was in 2011. The last time we looked at our water connection charges was 2018. So, and I think, Jeremy, didn't we land on maybe 2010 with our utilities deposits? So, you know, I think it's really great to be able to have all of these fees in our budget ordinance as like a one-stop shop, to be able to see them all and refresh them on an annual basis. So that might be something that we need to take a look at.
To your question, Mayor, about the impact fee comparison, I do have something for that. I'll give it again and we'll go through it, but I've got a comparison of Mount Pleasant, Charleston, Boilerworth, Battle Ponds, North Beach, Dorchester County, Hilton Head, Beaufort, Jasper, Broad Creek, so we have something that you can see. It puts us, we're towards the bottom, and honestly, that's why this is the way it is, and that's why we're asking.
Thank you, Jeremy.
All right. Thank you.
All right, we go about a 5-minute break here before we.
Actually, a 5-minute break.
Mike.
30 minutes. Shorter the better. Howard? Howard's going to kind of brief us on a couple of things. Living Lab, we've had some conversations during our December workshop about artificial intelligence and how that's coming into the marketplace in local government, and I guess the quickness, that it's moving in. And then also, I don't think folks realize how much technology and advancement we are using in our everyday organization right now. We talk about Opticom, real-time crime, but there's a lot of other things that are coming that we've done, and Howard's going to kind of briefly highlight those in a very high-level overview. So, first of all, someone left an iPad up here. Don't know if that's SFC or Devin or Jason Green.
I think it's Jason Clement.
Jason Clement? Ooh. All right, so Howard, go for it.
All right. Well, last presentation of the day, so I'm going to take what was a 45-minute and turn it into 20 minutes or less. So thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate it. I need that energy to get me through. No. I'm not going to recover what Fox just mentioned, but I did want to highlight the title of this presentation, which is Myrtle Beach in Action, or Innovation in Action. And the reason why it's called that is because, much like Fox said about technology being utilized in the organization, our organization is innovating every single day in every single department, no matter what level the employee is at. And it's just been really awesome and humbling to be able to witness that over these last 3 years. So jumping right into it, we're going to start with the Living Lab and go over some updates. As a refresher, the Living Lab is ultimately a public-private partnership designed to create opportunities for testing in the smart cities or GovTech world, as well as actual business development, where we encourage these companies to expand their operations into Myrtle Beach and the region in partnership with folks like Devin in Economic Development, Jason Green at MBDA, and also Sandy Davis at Myrtle Beach Regional Economic Development. So, our program status. As a reminder, we launched our very first participants in the program in August of last year. We are currently at 8 participants who have been launched. Technically speaking, that's 7 because we haven't done the press release for the 8th one, but that is right around the corner. We're just waiting on a couple of updates. They've taken care of all their onboarding items. In total, we're looking at 33 companies that have been engaged in the program thus far. And when you look at how many are in the different stages, whether it's the 7 in project development, the 4 in the MOA stage, or those that have already launched, you're looking at over a 60% interest to development or a launch in the program, which is fantastic, right? The other thing that's really exciting with this, and I apologize I wasn't able to throw this in the presentation because presentations were due before this was made official, we've also recently expanded, as of this past week, our first regional participant in something that's not GovTech, and it's actually in health tech. And that is going to be a pilot program ran by McLeod. So we're very excited about that. They are working with a group out of the Czech Republic on some AI tool that they've developed, and it's going to be piloted with them. So we're very, very excited about that partnership and being able to attract other verticals in the technology space in addition to GovTech into the region. So very excited about that. And that company is called VisionCraft, and the specific product is Visiotherapy. And as we've talked about business expansion being one of the other opportunities, as we've talked about previously, CocoFlow has already hired local talent in Myrtle Beach, and I believe that we can see more folks being hired by that company here. They actually are working actively out of the HTC Aspire Hub in partnership with Jenny Halstead over at Merge. So really great things there. And then also one of the other companies is actively looking at site selection in the United States, including Myrtle Beach. So we are seeing exactly what we hope to see out of the program continue, with several of our initial participants also filing paperwork to do extensions in the program, where they might have originally looked at 6 months, now they're looking at another 6 months or another year to continue the process. The other thing I want to highlight about the program is our program reach. I'm not giving you the statistics of all 33 companies, but our program reach is both hitting things nationally in the United States as well as internationally. We are actually helping introduce international companies to the U.S. market for the very first time by the way of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and this innovation ecosystem that all of our partners are working together to not only build but to maintain. That includes 4 out of Canada, and that's partly due to the relationship we've developed with the Canadian Trade Commission. It includes a group out of Northern Ireland, and then the 3 within the United States that have launched, being from Brooklyn, Boston, and Los Angeles. We also continue to rise in our presence with the National Smart Cities Conference, with this year being our first year as an accepted keynote speaker and keynote panel. And we also have been re-invited to be a review panelist for the Startup Challenge, which helps feed into our program back here in Myrtle Beach. So very excited for that to continue. The other thing I want to note briefly about program reach, we have secured, and we'll be bringing this to council in a few weeks, we have secured an additional sponsorship for the program by one of our local partners, and that will be in the tune of an additional $50,000. So again, private sponsorship supporting the private development and collaboration and partnership with the city. Yes, the March 25th agenda. 2 projects that we specifically wanted to highlight, and Fox, thank you for pulling these 2 out. First one is we're working with a company on overgrowth detection. I know this is something that is true to the heart of some of our council members, as we've talked about this, as well as members of our team. This project is going to be piloted by our property maintenance division underneath construction services under the leadership of Chris Thompson. And what it is essentially using AI to detect overgrown vegetation and then create a violation notice or a work order to go ahead and get that overgrown vegetation taken care of, as well as mapping it, etc. So very excited about that one. We're just working through some paperwork, and as soon as we get through the paperwork, we'll be able to announce that company. The second use case I want to highlight, because it involves some regional partnerships, is our Smart Streetlights program or project that we're developing in partnership with Santee Cooper, HTC, the city, including our departments in Public Works, the police department, IT, and a couple of others. This is going to be really, really cool to be able to see what these smart light fixtures can do. They look like normal light fixtures, that colonial style down, say, in Market Common, or your Cobra head lamp that you might find, or the teardrop along Ocean Boulevard. But that smart light fixture has adaptive lighting controls. It will give us the ability to host private wireless networks, as well as some other things to help with like traffic mitigation, etc. And as well as tying into real-time crime. So very excited about that project and thankful for all the departments supporting it. All right, so the next thing I'm going to talk about, sorry, I'm going to jump back to this really quick. I want to re-emphasize Myrtle Beach Innovation in Action. Our Living Lab program is currently being done through partnerships with Public Works, Parks and Recreation, Economic Development, IT, Police, Construction Services, Planning and Zoning, Neighborhood Services, Human Resources, Communications and Creative Services, and Grants. That is truly a team effort that is making this ecosystem a reality, and it's going to continue to be that way because of that team effort. Thank you to all the departments who continue to support it. All right, switching gears to talk about artificial intelligence. So what is artificial intelligence? This is a definition from the GovAI Coalition, which Myrtle Beach is a member of. In short, it's a system that can make predictions, recommendations, or decisions that influence real or virtual environments. The reason why it's important for us to be looking at this is because AI systems are starting to really consume the market very, very rapidly. And those outdated legacy systems are either closing down rather quickly, and we're getting a notice saying, hey, this software that you've been using is no longer going to be available in 6 months, or it is existing systems adapting AI technologies, and they're coming back to us and telling us, hey, you need to pay for this, and we want you to do additional support and training with your employees. So this is why it's important that we are taking a look at this right now. There's all kinds of AI that you can talk about. There's the things like large language models, which is going to be using generative AI, things like your chatbots, things like ChatGPT, Copilot through Microsoft 365. It also includes natural language processing. And believe it or not, that's been around for some time. That's called Amazon Alexa. That's called Google Assistant, Siri on our Apple products. These aren't brand new technologies. We've had them in our use for a while. We just never recognized them as AI. There's also things like deep learning where you're exploring autonomous vehicles, driving on roads, and even machine learning, which I'm going to give you an example of that specifically under computer vision. Maybe, there we go. Where it takes an initial input and output. In this example, somebody is biking, and we are saying, yes, that is an individual biking. Once we've trained that machine to recognize that there is somebody biking in the image or someone not biking in the image, we then train the AI to make a decision to change the traffic signal for that biker. Go ahead and make it green so they can cross the street, or make it red so they don't, right? So that is an example of computer vision and the enhancement of machine learning. So why are we looking at AI? There's two reasons. There's an internal and external responsibility. I'm going to start with the external one because, frankly, that's the most important one. We are all here to serve a larger community and our public. We have the responsibility to evolve and employ these best practices for good governance. If we sit here and ignore AI when it's going through its rapid growth in all the systems that we use or the systems that we may be using in the future, we are doing a disservice to those that we are here to serve. It is our responsibility for good governance to maintain that, not just to show better service delivery and efficiency, but also to ensure that their data is being protected, to ensure that we are following the correct privacy guidelines and telling other groups that might be out there that they need to do the same thing. And then internally, it's that access to information. What makes our employees really, really great at their jobs and make them the best that they can be in that first and service team? It's because they are highly informed. It's because they have the ability to take an existing process and make it so much better because we've given them the opportunity to upskill. So that's why we're looking at it. Just to back up, here's some research. To back up what I was saying, here's some research from a recent AI-powered city survey. As you can see, over 56% of cities are already embracing traditional AI tools to supercharge that GovTech and smart cities effort. You see most cities, 87%, are already on the generative AI journey, right? They're already looking at it from a planning perspective, a use perspective, maybe just kind of getting their feet wet like Myrtle Beach. And then over the next 3 years, the use of traditional AI will be very, very pervasive throughout the industry and profession in local government. Over 83% of cities are anticipated to be using it. So, what about Myrtle Beach then? Well, we conducted a survey before the retreat just to kind of get a sampling of how our own team members are utilizing it. And what we found out is currently and this is not the sample size I ideally would have liked to have. I would have liked to have like 250 to 300 responses. We had 156, so not bad. Still a decent representative sample. But even in that sample, we see over 25% of the respondents saying they are using AI in the workplace today. So we have employees who are using AI already. But there's no guidelines, there's no training, there's nothing there to help them use the AI tools properly and avoid any issues that might come across. And they're using it for a variety of things, whether it's predictive modeling, whether it's for content creation, customer service, or overall process efficiency. If we look at future use, we see that an even greater number of our team members want to be utilizing this new tool. Think about it, it's just like the advent of the internet. When the internet first came out, you had some people who were using it, some people who weren't, but the longer that technology was available, the more people wanted to use it, and the more efficiencies were gained in the workplace. Very similar to AI, as we see over 50% of our employees who took the survey wanting to use it, an additional 29% saying they're unsure. But I think with the proper education, with the proper resourcing, we would see more and more use. And again, in all of those areas that we mentioned previously. As it relates to our next steps, we also wanted to gain an understanding from our team members about what they would look for in an implementation or in an AI policy, which I'm going to talk about on the next slide. The important thing to see is even without a lot of training and information going out there about AI, our team members are already thinking about the most important things when you are contemplating adopting an AI technology. They are considering the ease of use, they're considering training and security and accuracy and overall satisfaction. And personally, what I find exciting is that they don't entirely care about having a lot of choice in what the AI tool is, as long as they can get their hands on it and be able to use it in their day-to-day, which I think is fantastic. And going back to Myrtle Beach Innovation in Action, over 45% of our employees, if you add the additional 37%, so roughly 70-ish% of our employees who participated in the survey had some kind of interest in participating in a sandbox where we demonstrate and create use cases for the city to be using AI. So what is our current work and next steps with AI? First and foremost, currently we've already conducted the AI survey, and we also joined the Gov AI Coalition, which represents over 450 municipalities and state agencies and education jurisdictions across the country. We are one of 5 in the state of South Carolina. The only other 4 that are currently members are Anderson, Columbia, Beaufort, and North Augusta. In addition to that, we are going to be working on developing our AI policy. You might be asking yourself, why do we need an AI policy? We need it so we can ensure that there is proper training. We need it to ensure that in that training, individuals are understanding how to protect private data and making sure that private data isn't getting released. We also want to overall maintain that data integrity, and that's a big partnership with IT. We also need to find a way to vet some of these technologies prior to departments procuring them, because there's a lot of risk that comes with AI. People don't understand it, but you have 2 things that happen frequently called AI hallucinations and AI biases. An AI hallucination, I want to point out, is a court case that came out of New York, Matta v. Avianca. In that court case, you had a lawyer who went in and used an AI tool, a large language model, to go ahead and give him answers to prepare to defend his, or to go forward for his defendant in court. And all of the court cases that were cited by that large language model that he did not go and verify, they were all false. And he was standing in front of a judge presenting this information as if it was accurate, right? That's what's called an AI hallucination. So it's important that through our policy, we are telling employees, you have to verify the information you are getting and receiving out of this AI tool. Don't just take it for fact, right? Do your own independent verification. That's why you were employed. That's why you are a talented member of our team. The second is what's called AI bias. I'm not going to cite a very specific example, but I think everybody in the room can catch on to what I'm saying here. Imagine that somebody is going out there and saying that a municipality's stats in a certain area is X. And the reason why they're saying that is because the media coverage for the longest time, or independent research institutions for the longest time, have come up with the formula and said, your stats are this. But in the last 5 years, we know that those stats are completely false. They're no longer relevant because we have done such a great job of turning those stats around. But because of the AI bias that exists and how much information is already out there that is old information, somebody could type it into that AI chatbot and it's going to turn around and give the false stats. That's an example of AI bias, using historical figures and facts to say that that is the reality of today. And we don't want that to occur in any of our operations. There's other things we have to look at, such as making sure that employees, again, are sourcing properly. They're confirming that they accept the responsibility of whatever they produce, including the use of AI. making sure that we are developing the appropriate use cases through that sandbox, having an incident response plan if the AI technology that we're using has some issues that causes a conflict, ensuring that employees know that there are prohibited uses of AI. There is data you cannot put into these systems, no matter how many times the company tells you that it's completely private and confidential. It is not. Especially if you are using it for free, and we have a lot of, we have instances of that. There's also other things that recently came up in our last GovAI Coalition General Meeting that I connected with Val on about insurance. There's appropriate insurance clauses we have to bring into our policies if we are adopting or utilizing these technologies. And if we're not accounting for that risk before we're using them, it puts us in a very tricky situation. It's going to take a village, but it is something that we can execute together. And that's where I point out to these 8 action steps. Many of these 8 action steps we are already doing. We're already modernizing our IT foundation through the great work that Brian Garrett and his team are doing. We are already cultivating an innovation ecosystem across all of our departments and operations. And in some areas, we're transforming various domains, whether it's government operations, safety and security, et cetera, to embed into what we're doing. So that is the status of AI in our organization. Last thing I'm going to cover is technology in Myrtle Beach. We've heard a lot about this already throughout the retreat. There's a couple more that we're going to highlight in here, but know that this isn't the extent. We have more and more departments in our organization and more employees who are adopting technology or utilizing these new tools we've given them to succeed in their jobs. So first one is the N4 implementation, which our fearless project manager, Diana, has been leading us through. And it involves a lot of different departments, as you can see up here. What I want to highlight is things are getting implemented, things are getting done, the train is moving, and it continues to. We're in a lot of testing phases right now. So we're very excited about that. Jeremy, he and his team went live with the first public rollout for hospitality tax earlier this month. We had some great coverage through the support of our communication and creative services team, and then further developments that IT is leading right now, particularly our developers, on testing for permitting, inspections, and zoning. Why is this important? A picture says 1,000 words. This is why it's important. We can either continue to live on this green screen that was initially developed in 1989, or we could be advanced and modernized like what we're getting out of the N4 product. So it's a really, really great program that a lot of staff members are spending some good time to get developed and released to better the quality of service delivery to our residents and businesses, and we can't thank you all enough for that. Next one I'm going to highlight. A couple of years ago, Council gave a very incredible investment to the city by allowing us to move forward with purchasing Microsoft 365, which IT has deployed for the organization. And in partnership with them, particularly one of our programmers, Blake Parker, we've developed what we call 311 Lite, our initial steps into a formal 311 office in the future. And with that, what we developed is the property maintenance SharePoint page, which includes some automated workflows that we were able to build out. It also includes our first introduction of Power BI, which with the new Innovation and Performance Manager, who will start on Tuesday, we will start rolling those out across all of the departments to help us track our performance measures and be able to utilize that data to take action and valuable insights. The other thing, through the great identification of our IT department, they've also had these GTACs deployed, which are basically these heavy-duty computers or tablets that the property maintenance and inspectors can go out and use while they're in the field. The important thing about that is instead of going out in the field, collecting all this information, writing everything down or typing it on a computer, and then coming back in the office, plugging in, then reprocessing all that, our inspectors can process it while they're out in the field. We're still working through some of those bugs and some of those trainings, but that's going to be important when we also roll out N4, because that's another one of those capabilities that they will be able to have. So hats off to the property maintenance team for being kind of our guinea pigs, if you will, and helping spearhead this effort with much more to come in partnership. I also want to make sure we're giving a shout out to our public safety department. So with fire, you heard earlier on that video from Chastity and Creative Services, the vehicle preemption and Opticom, they were able to add 13 additional intersections, bringing us to 75 total in 2024. They also were able to add an additional drone with thermal imaging. That's what you see in this image right here, which is allowing them to have increased support for search and rescue efforts, for planning large events like Coastal Carolina, I do that every time. Carolina Country Music Festival, and other planning for command ops. And then also the Hand-Heavy app that Meredith was mentioning earlier, which has been distributed across the entire team in the fire department, enabling rapid access to medication dosing and equipment sizing in real time. And then also we have our police department, who's also continuously investing in technology and growing the service delivery for our residents and visitors. The Real-Time Crime Center, which is pictured left, over 1,200 camera views, with 27 camera views being dedicated or being able to tap into our license plate readers. So that's fantastic. Also 4 drones from them, which are assisting with investigations, finding missing persons, evidence, and more. And then the expansion of the acoustic threat detection program with ShotSpotter. In 2022, you had heard the announcement about rolling it out in the Myrtle Beach school cluster. And then very recently, these last couple of months, they've rolled it out in the entertainment district in downtown. And Chief, from I think what we've already talked about, it is already having very positive results. So kudos to you and your team and IT and our other folks who've been making that happen. So all in total, there's a lot going on in the city of Myrtle Beach. We have some very innovative team members. We are modernizing that IT infrastructure through the hard work of folks like Brian's team and many others. We're moving forward on N4 through the great work and leadership of Diana and many more. And it is a great place to be and a great place to work when you see things like this happening. Any questions? Yes.
Explain to everybody how quickly, what was the timeline of when you first started talking to them to now we have 8?
Yeah, so timeline, when we first started talking to them, it was probably about 1.5 years. The reasoning why it took us a while is because there were a lot of things we had to figure out initially with the program. We had to identify that private sponsorship. We had to identify what can we do legally versus, what can we not do legally, like understanding our bounds, developing the initial memorandums of agreement and making sure that those were reviewed. What I can say is our last 3 participants, we have gotten them from initial conversation to the point where they're doing their onboarding. We've gotten it down to about 2 to 3 months.
Thank you.
Yep.
Howard, there's a lot of great stuff going on. At what point am I going to be able to opt out of receiving a paper water bill?
So as soon as we go live with the N4 implementation.
I said, at what point am I going to be able to opt out of receiving a paper water bill?
Yeah, now.
Can you?
Yeah.
Right now, Greg. Right now.
You've been able to do that for years. You go to utilities. However, and I'm not trying to make you feel bad or anything.
Oh, I'm not going to feel bad.
Go for it. No, that is not, no, I would never do it. You can't. However, we are going away from that.
I pay it automatically. It's set up automatically. I still get a paper bill.
You can do that soon. With utility service, that's been for years you can do that, but there's a better system that we're going to have. It's actually coming through payments or payment processes that we have now. They're going to give you an online bill. So right now we're in the middle of that being built. That should be rolled out in 90 days. Now with that, in tandem, whenever we go live in N4, you'll also have that payment portal as well. And at that point, we hope, because we know how much it costs to print, that will slowly go away. Now, will it go away completely? I don't think so. There's some people that they want to do. But the goal is to really limit that because of postage, because of print. It costs a lot of money, thousands
first started on council, I was receiving an irrigation bill and a water bill in 2 separate envelopes.
Yeah.
They got combined since then. Now I'm getting 2 bills in 1 envelope.
And then you, soon.
And I don't even look at them because it's automatically paid online. So I can just have them stop getting mailed.
Well, soon, whenever
So
the decision
soon.
rolls out, you'll have,
So I can't already.
you'll have 2 meters on 1 bill. See?
Wow.
Wow.
And 0 paper bills.
But then, that's the fine.
In
That's the
9
capital
days.
bill, yeah.
Nice.
You wouldn't realize how hard it is to get 2 meters on 1 bill. And the countless hours we spend with these developers talking about, well, what about this? What about this? But yes, everything you're asking for is going to happen, and sooner than later.
So that's
Well,
why.
wait, it's going to happen or it already happened? Can I stop getting a paper bill right now?
But I wouldn't go through the utility e-service, because it's going away. We don't want to use it anymore.
That's gonna be an outline.
Yes.
Howard's up there drinking water saying, and can I get back to the
Utility
conversation?
companies over.
Is that
No.
why you should get in the water bill, that little update notice, you know, it talked about, is that
Send
why
it to
we
my email.
don't get it anymore, because we do want to print?
Yeah, that's something to do. That's through, if it's what I think you're talking about, that's through public information, that was something Mark did. We don't do that anymore.
It was part of the water, it was inserted with the water.
We don't do the inserts anymore, right, Aaron?
Insert it?
No, the little, the inserts.
The monthly report.
Progress report.
Progress report.
The progress report,
yeah.
no.
We don't do those.
The reason why we're doing well, a lot of things, but this has been the big hiccup, us going from this green screen to Infor. We couldn't do any of this under the old model. Getting to Infor, Diana and a lot of other people have done a lot of great work to get to, it's been hard. It's been a grind, and now that we're almost at the finish line, we'll start building, it's gonna start going pretty quickly. And you'll see a lot more AI stuff coming into the budget. We got city detectives, which is bad. I shouldn't have said that. The property maintenance program, which is AI. Sorry, forget about that comment. So it's gonna start coming, and I know Dr. Connor was big on this during our December retreat, which is why we brought it here. The budget does include a lot of these things, so.
Yeah, there's a lot of rollouts coming, and they're coming
And it's,
fast.
and it's coming fast, it's gonna come rapid fire now that we're almost at the finish line. And with that comes learning curves and things with that, so we have some other hurdles to jump over.
So I can get rid of my Radio Shack Tandy 264 floppy disk?
Yes.
Yeah, probably.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Hey, Howard,
Yes, sir.
you mentioned a new partner, $50,000, that type of thing. Who is that?
So because we're live, I can't answer that question because they want to do a big press release and they'll be attending the council meeting, but I'm happy to talk to you separately.
Okay. Okay. I was just wondering if it had anything to do with the trip to Boston, but. Not that one. Not that one? Okay.
Thank you, Howard.
All
Great
right.
job.
Thank you.
All right, we do have one executive session item for today. And that is to discuss negotiations concerning contractual arrangements involving the Myrtle Beach Pelicans. We will invite Fox Simons, Will Ryan, Brian Tucker, Michelle Comfort, Amy Newshaper, Josh Kruger, and Marilyn Denari. Is there a motion to go into executive session? A motion from Mr. Chestnut, second from Ms. Catley. Any discussion from council? All those in favor? Aye. All opposed? We will go into.
We're checking to see the space in there.